Chapter 5. Iris. Summer 1914. I'm 15. I am half buried in straw in the depths of Nell's stall, watching the gentle shift of her elegant legs. Her tail swoops and flicks, black and yellow and steel gray. I'm not in trouble yet, but I will be when they find the broken vase in the dining room. Best to sit it out. The straw is warm and prickly. The stable is quiet. I slip in and out, treading the edge, the abyss of sleep. My father's voice is suddenly in my ear, and it's all I can do not to leap to my feet and squeak. He is strange of late. My father. He looks at things that aren't there. He answers questions I have not asked. He speaks to people who I know are long, long dead. His lined face pierces my heart. His great brown eyes are soft, too soft, where they should be sharp. He sounds all right now. Of course, he's not actually in my ear, but close enough, in Soldier's stall next door. Must have been dreaming deeper than I thought, or they've crept up on the lightest of feet. His question, Shake's voice replies. Papa's saying the poultice should set it right by next week. Someone clicks their tongue, and Tom's voice says, come up, now. They're quiet. I picture them all three bent and earnest over Soldier's hoof. He's doing well, says Papa. Yep, says Tom. Papa says, the horses will miss you. Tom says, someone else will come along soon enough. And the horses will learn to like it, says Shakes, comfortable. Not everyone wishes to work at Raw Blood, says my father. He sounds tired. The hollow sound of Soldier knocking his bucket with a hoof. He hopes it's feed time. My father whispers to him. The good hard clap of a palm on shining hide. I will look in on him again tomorrow, Papa says. I feel him, his dark presence behind the stall door as he goes. From Soldier's stall, there comes the whisper of caps being put back on heads. Someone lights a pipe. The blue smoke is idle on the air. Soldier knocks his bucket. Well, says Shakes, maybe it's no bad thing, you going. Suppose, says Tom, you keep quiet just for a bit? Just while we muck out the boxes. After that, why? You go on and get it all off your chest. I'll be miles away, but you'll feel better. Used to be such a nice little bugger, you did. Well, grown too fast, your common sense hasn't kept pace. Bad lot. Not fit to be around gentle people. Shake's scorn rings high into the stable rafters. Young ladies and so on. Round here. That's cheek right there, says Shakes. Yes. Drinking and chasing girls and whatnot. Whatnot? Army'll teach you what's what, says Shakes. Mark my words. War will. Well, says Tom, and there's a little crack of uncertainty in his voice. Not sure I'm right for it. Best notion you've had in years. Not mine, says Tom, as it happens. He gave me the boot. There's silence. Soldier knocks his bucket. How's that? Shakes says. Himself. Told me I was no longer needed. Well, see? Drinking. Chasing girls. That's what you get. But Shake's voice has lost its confidence. Gave me 100 quid. Told me to enlist. Well, shy of 18, I am. He said they'd take me anyway. And they did. 100 quid? I'll go and all. They go way down the stable, voices raised, bickering and fond. Long after they're gone, I am pinned in place. My eye at the crack in the stall door, Stro rustling, Nell breathing warm into my back. I have abided by his rules in recent years so closely. I have kept my word. I have obeyed him to the letter. But Papa is sending Tom away, and that is not in our agreement. When I think of Tom going to war, my heart actually stops. Before the glass, I smoothed the dark fabric one last time. The stays are unfamiliar, another skeleton between cloth and skin. I am tight but brittle somehow, as if I might break. The perfume of lilies hangs in the air, which I regret. I have tried to wash it off my wrists. It is pale, lingering, persistent. I don't think it's a scent for skin, for wigs or cloth or something. It took an hour, maybe more, to get the riding habit on. 60 tiny jet buttons fasten me, throat high, to the mandarin collar that brushes my chin. The jacket small, severe. Whalebone pinching me in at the waist. Swags and swathes of serge skirt. A heavy train with a loop for the wrist. The deep, deep blue faded in patches to stormy gray. Attic dust still clinging in the folds. I present a strange, antiquated silhouette. Tall, wasp-waisted, armored. Anyhow, I don't look like myself, which can only help. My flesh is restless. Behind me in the glass, the window shows blue sky. That's good. I must look different, be different. Now, I will no longer be told what to do and what to fear. There's no denying things haven't come out quite right. I smell like a syrup or a sweet sickening. The corsetry is snappy, cracking. I can't feel my lungs. The glass shows me pale and cross. I pinch my cheeks, but it makes no difference. Part the hair over the left eye or catch it back in a low pompadour and pull out softening locks over temples and ears with your comb. Soft bandings across the hair are universally becoming. My hair won't even stay under my hat. I lick my wrists, rub them on the skirt. Bitter, oily taste on my tongue. I give it up. I spit into the ewer, take my whip in hand, and go. There you are, old chap, says my father, melting out of his darkened study into the bright hall. His spectacles are askew. His nose wrinkles at the cloud of roses. He says, writing? Iris, there was a vase in the dining room. To Grimm's found, I say quickly. He sees me. He stills. Even at a distance, I feel all his muscles go quiet. He says, where's your twill? It's muddy, I say. As if this were a sufficient reason to go to the attic, find and put on my dead mother's riding dress. It fits well, he says at last. A quick furrow between his brows. I'll put you up, he says, and we go. The sun is blinding after the dim hall. On the blazing white drive, Nell stands, her pale legs in constant movement, shifting, twisting her into the glistening surface. A brown hoof lifts, strikes the marble chips, tosses them into a spray. Matilda throws herself sideways. At the horses' heads, the groom tuts, soothes each in turn. When I come near, Nell stills, lifts her ears. I stroke her neck. Her withers curve against the sky. My father's hand is cupped for my foot. I swing the habit up over my arm in an unfamiliar, heavy sway, reach for the high pommel, step in. Something happens as he lifts me. Beneath my foot, his hand is gone, and I'm caught, suspended in air. Then I fall. My skirt billows. I land neatly on my feet with a crunch of gravel. Nell turns a dark, surprised eye. When I look, there is a thin, old gray man where my father should be. His arms shake by his sides as he stands. I begin to say, "Papa, are you?" But the old man flaps his hand like the muscular wing of a bird. His lips are trembling loose. He shuffles toward me, hand outstretched once more for my foot. His eyes are somewhere else. Meg, the old man says, reaches for me. The groom brushes past him, comes silently to my side, throws me aloft in one quick movement, settles my foot in the stirrup. My father stops, blinks. He turns, goes up the steps, goes inside. I look after him, a bent figure vanishing into the shadowed hall. Then I put Nell's nose into the breeze. She huffs, plays with the bit, wanting to go. The drive scatters around us with the sound of breaking glass. It's not till we're on earth, grass, that I hear Matilda behind. I don't look back. We pound up the hill into the copse. We slow out of sight of the house, and Matilda comes up beside us, settles into place at my side. The breeze wanders through the trees. My heart is heavy and burning. "Horse coming on nicely," he says, nodding at Nell. "You'd no call to do that," I say, to shame him like that. His face is unreadable in the shadow of his cap. He says nothing. He was all right. How could you show him up? A feeling like taut wire in my chest. And I think again of what I heard yesterday in the stable. "How dare you," I say to him and nudge Nell. She moves on, ears pricked at the rustles of the woodland. Matilda hurries to keep pace beside her. I say, "Fall behind, Gilmore." He starts to speak, then touches his cap, pulls Matilda up, falls a proper distance behind. This was supposed to go so differently. We move into untenanted country, alone but for the larks and the rabbits. He stays behind, a precise 5 feet. I feel him like a weight. Bees hum. Grasshoppers sing. My head aches. The stink of lilies hangs in my throat. He comes up the side when we reach the ford. He fixes me with the side of his eye, blue and white. He pulls his cap off, rubs his head, puts it back on. The dart runs wide and bronze before us. I've never seen it so high. Shining surface, deep water. Summer rain running to the sea. "Iris," Tom says. I lift my chin up and away. He says, "You ride with shakes." Not with me. I'm silent, eyes on the burnished river. "Why today?" Tom asks. I think of what Shake said to my father in the stable. Tom watches me and waits. He's taller than I remember. Quieter. His face used to show everything. He has shut himself away, and I'm facing a stranger. Matilda, who likes to dance and bite and fret, stands like stone under him. His hands on the reins are not boy's hands. It's no good. We haven't spoken to one another in so long. I can't remember how to do it. Tom gives me a long measuring look, then shrugs, sharp and furious. "All right," he says and surges past. He plunges Matilda into the ford. She moves surely through the water, climbs the far side, her wet tail a mean thin streak of bay. Tom wheels her around on the bank to face us. Nell steps out with cautious hooves. She fusses as the river stones shift under her. She bends, breathes her disapproval at the quick brown surface. I let her make her own way. She won't fall. When the water's at her flanks, the folds of my skirt come loose from my hand, and the hem skims the water. The cloth blackens, hauled in by the running stream. I say, "Damn, pull at it, gather it up." "I've time to finish that book," says Tom from across the river. "Or pop over to London for the day to see the king, shall I? Take a cruise on the Nile. Still be back by the time you get here." Matilda shifts, patient under him. She bows a long mahogany neck, salutes us from the bank. In the river, Nell stops, plants her legs, shivers. "Particular, aren't you?" Tom calls. Nell pays him no mind, breathes crossly at the water. Tom drops his reins, folds his arms as if for sleep, tips his cap over his nose, snores. I push Nell on. She doesn't want to go. "You've done it 100 times," I say, and give her a hard cut across the quarters with the whip. She leaps forward. The riverbed vanishes. We're buffeted from the stony floor, off the shelf, into deep water. Nell is lifted, taken, caught in cold brown current. She's swept, we're swept, like paper in the wind. My skirts are a heavy balloon in the insistent, downward suck. All around, little waves ripple and cold water grasps my waist, arms, chest. The horse's neck rears like a sea monster in front of me. Nell swims. Her muscles move like pistons. I float, cling to her straining neck. My foot drifts loose from the stirrup. The heavy skirt pulls the river wants it. Water rises, schemes my chin. Knotted, cold fingers loosen. I feel them go. Cold mouthfuls. I think, so this is what it's like. A glimpse of Tom sliding off Matilda, face very pale, caught in an expression I don't know. Nell strikes the sandy bottom, finds her legs. She plows busily through the water, up, out, onto the bank, casting walls and waves of spray in all directions. I lie forward on her, hug her as she moves, solid, suddenly earthbound. Tom says, "Hell," and wipes his face with his neckcloth. His fingers have a twitch in them. The cloth won't go where he wants. I come up beside them. Nell is iron gray, wet. She leans in, nostrils wide, to adore Matilda. Matilda blinks. Her hide shivers with pleasure under the scatter of cool drops. I throw my habit back over her quarters where it hangs, sopping. The bottom drops away. On the right, Tom says. "Yes," I say, it does. He reaches his unsteady hand to Nell's neck. "Good girl," he says. She pays him no mind, and her nose touches Matilda's. "Check her legs," he says, and makes to get down. "She's all right," I say. We look at one another. It's like the skin's been stripped from both of us. I don't know what to do, so I say, "Race'll dry us off. If you remember the rules." He's gone before I say rules. All that's left is the pounding of hooves and trembling air between the trees. Nell shivers with longing, and I let her go. She runs like a greyhound, flattens her Arabian ears, flattens herself over the land. The woods blur. As we come out of the copse, We pass Matilda. She's straining at the bit, held back to a canter. Tom is twisted in the saddle, looking behind him. He doesn't hear our approach on the soft woodland floor. He starts. We fly past him into open ground. The moor, wide in the sunshine. Wind hits us like a breaker. Ahead, the tor spills out of the hill. The old wall curves toward it, cuts across the green. It's been some time, but of course I remember. The first boulder, shaped like an egg, is the winning post. No jumping the wall, no cutting across. Tom always wins. I am vague and blind, eyes streaming. Follow the long, hectic curve. Nell elongates beneath me, opens up her stride. Clods of earth scatter and fly. My habit is blown out stiff behind us, solid in the wind. Emptied, nothing left but my heart and the drum of hooves. When Nell sees Matilda's long brown nose inching up beside her, she hoots. I've never heard a horse make this sound before. It's impossible that we could go faster, but Nell's gray neck snakes out, and she becomes a flat pattern of flying legs. Cold thrills run under my skin. A loose stone, a rabbit hole, an old nail, a dip in the ground. If she doubts for a moment, if she puts a foot wrong, we'll break our necks. The egg shivers, thrums 100 feet ahead. The land rushes toward us at a gallop. Matilda is nowhere to be seen. Golden lichen and gray rock flash by. Past the egg. I pull Nell up, cheeks stinging. Her breath comes in hard explosions. She slows gradually, like someone waking from a dream. I stroke her hot neck, sticky under my palm. I tell her she's wonderful. My ears ring in the sudden quiet. We're wind blind. Behind me, Tom says she had me off at the wall. He's leading Matilda with one hand. The other hangs limp, strange. Fine scratches cross his cheek. Black mud covers his side. Matilda pushes Tom with her face. He pushes her back with the awkward hand. This is all wrong. Tom never falls off. Serves you right, I say at last. Going over the wall's cheating. Not in the game. I didn't. He comes to lift me down, one hand limp, the other formal. No, I tell him. I slither off, wet, awkward. Tom says, you smell like an old woman's wig. Lilies. We tether the horses to a small twisted rowan tree that grows from the side of the hill and go up. We find a patch of high shade in the tumble of stone and sit. I spread my skirts wide to dry, an expanse of wet surge. On the rock pile below, an adder emerges from a shaded crevice. It coils itself decidedly, silently, in the sunshine. Around us, the land is blue and green and purple. Clouds pass. Somewhere in the warm distance, sheep make complaints. I didn't do it to shame him, Tom says suddenly. Dropped you. Saw you fall. He's worse, Iris. These days. I was all right. I am belligerent for form's sake. I try not to think of the strange gray man who took my father's place. I try not to think of how he reached for me and called me by my mother's name. I was angry, I say, not because of father. Or yes, in part. Are you going away, Tom? Are you going somewhere? He says, no, are you? The words are light, pattering. I take the wrist lying at his side, bend it slowly back. He shouts, sits up. The adder vanishes into the dark like water poured from a pitcher. The wrist is swollen, pink beneath the brown of his arm. The bones feel too far away beneath the skin. I fumble beneath my wet skirt. Knife, I tell him. He eases it from his pocket, puts it in my hand. The crack of tearing cotton. You'll have a job to explain it, he says. Tear my things all the time. When I have 3 long strips of petticoat, I take his wrist, find it tight and smooth. He bears it, shivering. I give him back his knife, his wrist. You're going away, I say. Don't lie. His eyes are on Matilda below. She rubs her pole against the rowan bark. I say, I heard you, and shakes yesterday. What's that? He asks and turns to me. The lines of his face are strange and thoughtful. His cheekbone beaded, smeared with blood. That papa gave you money. The words are fragments in my mouth. His good fingers drum the granite. They stroke the wet, dark line of my skirt where it lies. He rubs the hem between finger and thumb. This bugger, he says, nearly killed you. It was my mother's, I say. Are you going to the war, Tom? Where, he asks, do I go if not there? What do I do? Going to be your groom forever, am I? He pulls his cap off, lies back on the rock, face to the sky, eyes closed. In the bright day, his face is thin, white, absent. An old bruise the color of plum jam spreads over his forehead, disappears into the eye socket. Another, older than that, yellowing beneath it. The hand that clasps the cap to his chest is swollen, the knuckles rich purple, soft black. Been fighting, I say. What have you been at, Tom? Fighting, drinking, and then, inspired, chasing girls. His look is very blue. What of it? He asks. What do you care about it? You're not much good, I say. At fighting. From the looks of you. No, not much, he says. Have to get better. When I go. Don't then, I say. But he goes on. I wanted to say, anyway. His hand quivers on the granite. That I should have known and not taken you out that night. I should have known you were ill. So sorry. Having discharged his duty, he nods and turns away, passing his hand across his eyes. His white wrist is linen-bound, unbearable. I think of how I made him ride behind me through Darmeet. I recall what I said to him after the cave, years ago. My voice shrill through the fever. Too old to play with the stable boy. Something, some feeling, rises in me like water. I've treated you like a servant, I say. I find the word, which is unfamiliar, exotic. That was unforgivable. No, he says. Hardly. He puts his head in his hands. Chasing girls, he says, high-pitched. It's a fair imitation. Shakes die. His eyelids are large, dark-lashed, so white they're nearly blue. Gleam of teeth through his fingers. He's still angry. And I'm sorry, I say. I'm sorry that your father died. I should have told you that much sooner. He shakes like a dog that's been told to stay. In his neck the blood courses, the tendons move delicately. Too close to the surface, too easily reached. He's flesh, bone, breath, all held together with wishful thinking. I cannot stop imagining him bloody, blown apart. I touch his cheekbone, and beneath it, the elegant hollow that curves to his mouth. His breath is warm on my fingers. He winces. "What are you doing?" he asks. "It will be all right," I say. But if you leave, I hear myself say then, it'll not be right with me again, ever. I can't find the words to tell him how awful it would be, how my heart would lie dead in my chest like a stone. Tom puts my hand away from his face. "Get off," he says. "You daft?" He is blank with dislike. "Sorry," I say. "I mean, barely a word to me for a year. Now this. Last thing you said to me was to leave you alone that time, do you remember? Alone. I suppose that's what it is. You're too much alone, Juicy. That's all. Who do you know?" "No one. Only me. He keeps you all alone out here, Iris. It's not right. Makes you strange. Poor kid. It's like a rapid series of blows to the face. I feel the wind behind each one. Colors are blurred with salt. "Oh, now," he says lightly. "Oh, come off it. Things are happening very fast or too slowly." I press my eyes hard into my hands. Lights bloom and contract against my lids. Sunlight smarts on my steaming cheeks. I wait. I wait until the needling stops in my eyes and the breath doesn't hitch in my throat. I wait. When I'm calm, I look up. Tom's back is to me. It is rigid, expressive. I slap him hard. The flesh rings through his thin shirt. He shouts, "Oh, you bugger." "Look at me," I say. "I've something to say." His shoulders drop. His entire being slumps. "Iris," he says to his knees. "Go on," I say. He looks up. Before he can speak, I feint another slap at his face, light and fast. He shouts, rocks back, eyes wide. My fingertips graze his chin. He holds his hand to his cheek and stares. "Funny, I don't think," he says. But it is. He is aghast. He should be clutching pearls at his neck. After a moment, he laughs too, his high, rattling laugh. "Do you know," I ask, "why I kept away from you?" And I tell him. About the bargain. About the Villarcas. About her. Tom listens intently. The air and the sun seem to cleanse the words. The world changes as I speak. The fear goes out of it. When I'm finished, he says, "My dad told me something like it, you know. Very like all that, before he died." His mouth narrows, a bitter line. Those old men. Ghosts and curses and so on. Just an old-fashioned way of saying they didn't get on. It's all nonsense. You know that, don't you, Iris? "I do, really," I say. "He must be lonely," says Tom. I am shaking, released. I guessed right the first time, after all, on that day in the graveyard. She is just Papa's fear, that I will leave him alone. We sit. We watch the warm, humming land. I look at him, the line of his nose, his jaw. Memory drifts through, in no order. Feet in shallow streams. Long days and the taste of grass. Snow, shining horsehide. The pain of the tooth I lost in that tumble, the dungy stable yard. The pink ragged gap under my tongue. His eyebrow, the line of a swallow against the sky. He held the foal's head that summer. Its dark eyes, his careful hands. How violently, how ferociously, he willed it to live. So much of my waking life has been spent in this way, being quiet with Tom. I meant it all. I say to him what I said. I'll never be all right without you. I'm not afraid. He turns a grim blue eye on me. Actually, I am afraid. A feather floats through my chest. It sidles, drifts, settles. Tom is suddenly white and awful. Bugger, he says. He takes 2 handfuls of damp serge habit and unfolds them gently. He spreads the hem wide and pulls hard. Stone skids under me. My shoulder meets his collarbone with a thump. I say, watch it. He says, sorry. Close to, he's strange. His eyelashes dark feathers. The vast shifting geometry of his face, the pink cavern of his ear. Breath in my hair, wind in long grass. The tiny sounds of his skin. Baffling, disconnected glimpses. Eyes opaque like panic. I draw a finger along the dark swell of his brow. It's all right, I say. His hands unfold. They make a flower in the small of my back. His breath fills my head like the ocean. We're alive. The sky's larger than it has ever been. I'll come, Tom says. No, I say. He's to hear it from me. The light's lazy on the drive. The scent of cut grass. Raw blood is long and quiet in the afternoon. Your estate, Tom says. I am. My skirts are drenched again and heavy with mud. On the way back, Tom pulled me onto Matilda mid-river. We let Nell make her own way. I sat before him all the way home, his heart against my back. I put my tongue out, throw Nell's reins at him. The soaked skirt is heavy on my arm. The front door screeches, but no one comes. I creep through the sunlit rooms. Across the great hall, where the sun lies in warm bars on the flags, down the west corridor, where it falls in great diamonds across the floor and walls. At the door of my father's study, I pause. What to say? What has been decided? Marriage, I suppose, though we haven't spoken of it. All I know is that there is no time. No time before Tom goes, so it must be now. I wait for the doubt to catch up with me. It doesn't come. I am warmed from within. The tour, the sunlight. I carry it before me in my mind's eye. I have broken our bargain, but he will forgive me. My father has wanted my happiness, always. The study door opens with a noise like a knife in the back. The room's hot, suffocating. Stink of old sweat. The dark paneling is raked with scars as if by claws. Screws of paper litter the floor. Something small and dark scurries under a bookcase. A book flung face down in the bare grate. Shakes doesn't clean in here. This is Papa's place. My father is dreaming. Half propped at the desk, glazed eyes under heavy lids. Leather wallet open on the shining walnut, the hint of shining metal within. His face is absent, but his long, graceful hands are busy. The bunched-up shirt sleeve, the tourniquet, the needle gleaming and ready. I whirl, about to go. This is most dreadful. This is a thing I must never do. Watch while Papa uses his pouch. My wet skirts make a grand sweeping noise across the floor. Iris. His voice slow and muddy. Slack-tongued. I am going, Papa. I am so sorry. Very sorry. I hear myself high-rabbiting. A nervous child. I stop with my hand on the doorknob. I think of the long years of solitude, the years of the disease. Those nights I feared I might not see the end of, that death would swoop down soft and take me up unknowing. The long days of loneliness, the shame, the guilt, deep-rooted. I am a pariah, infected, the tales of ghosts, of deaths and curses. I am an ignorant oddity riddled with freaks, nearly a grown woman, but I can't put my hair up. And also that Papa wouldn't be troubled with people, so that he could take his morphine in peace. Suddenly, I'm not sorry at all. Tell me, Papa, I say, if I had not been interested in medicine and found out that horror autotoxicus was a lie, would you have ever told me any different? Though when the disease was no longer any good, you came up with her. Reasons that I can never leave you. Diseases, ghosts, you liar, Papa. You'd have me forever a child. His eyes, dark and steady on mine. Do you know, I even convinced myself that I had seen her? I had a very high fever. I was so afraid. I have been afraid all my life. Enough. I go to where he slumped. I pluck the hypodermic needle from his nerveless hand. He reaches, vaguely, and I put it behind my back. This is all you care about, I say. I have long accepted it. I have looked up to you. I had hoped to be like you. Those were childish hopes. You are not to be emulated. You are a coward who'd have me shun the world as you do. You kept me here alone, under glass like a microscopic slide. You made Tom a groom, threatened me with diseases and ghosts, hoping to end our friendship. You nearly succeeded, and then you tried to send him away. But, Papa, there are some things you cannot control. I have come to tell you that we are to be married. He says, in a thick, dreamy voice, I see. Good, I say. I hope that you will give me your blessing. He sighs. I see, he says again. Her. He looks up. Something empty and dead is using his eyes. He stands. Is Papa so tall? A stench comes off his body. Papa, I waste no more words, because that is not my father. The great walnut desk topples with a crash. I leap back and say no, but he's fast. His fingers are around my neck. They press stars up into my eyes. He squeezes my throat with one hand with powerful ease. Pain, whirling white, cracking like little bones breaking. His grip's too low to break the hide, but I'm suffocating. Something like a rock smashes into my cheekbone. He hits me with a great, closed fist. Things burst, and then there's singing in my ears, in my skull. The room blurs and fades. We're deep in a cloud. Sound is muffled, far away. Through the misty streaks, he reaches behind me for the needle. As he does, his grip loosens just a little. I break his nose with the heel of my hand. A quick red crack. Blood in the air, suspended droplets. He roars, and the fingers are gone from my throat. I drag air in once like a bellows, then I'm off. Tom's outside the study door, white and questioning. I can't speak and I can't see for tears. Tom looks at me for a heartbeat. Then he takes my hand and we run. The quick, heavy steps of the stranger behind us. Running through raw blood. Tom pulling me. My arm stretches like rubber about to break. He's pulling me so hard. Fingers squeak on doorknobs. Panicked hands slap the corners. Corridors seem to narrow as we go. the stranger just behind, breathing like a furnace. We explode into the great sunlit hall. The writing habit falls through my treacherous fingers. I can't catch it up again, and it drags soggy behind me, catching in cracks, leaving a shining wake, slowing me. It is all the dreams I've ever had of being chased. I run from the darkness. It's close on my heels. The stranger's breath hacks and rattles, sounds like battlements, stone grinding against stone. A great shadow looms like a turret at my back. My foot catches in my skirt. I fall. It's endless. Something heavy hits me, knocks me into the earth with a cracking of ribs. I hit out with both fists. I still hold the needle in one hand. I'd forgotten. It punctures flesh somewhere with an abrupt sound. Glass splinters. There's blood in many little streams all over my hands, running red in all directions into the dark. Cool flags under my cheek. The hall is barred with sun. It falls everywhere in broken stripes. A messy, shining trail across the stone. Halfway across the hall, the trail becomes mingled with glutinous red. It is obscene, like the path of a great, injured worm. I sit up. By my feet, the black shape. A pile of cloth and strange, pale flesh. The blood runs everywhere, pools, shines in little runnels between the flagstones. It runs over the shattered glass that lies everywhere in the warm light. The broken hypodermic needle protrudes from Papa's chest, moves gently with his shallow breath, shining. Air twitters through his punctured lung. Tom's small, curled in the corner by the fireplace, back turned. His head bobs. A grinding noise comes from him. Papa puts forth a slippery red hand. "Iris," he says. "This." He twists the ring from his slick finger. Slow. It slides into my palm like a little stone. "Yours now," my father says. "Dear heart." "Papa," I say. The dark clown mouth spreads outward on the gray of his waistcoat. "Papa," I say. I understand now. I did not believe. I am sorry, so sorry. My father says, I know. Or perhaps it is no. He starts staring at me or something behind me. A cold finger runs down my spine. I whip around. There's nothing but raw blood, warm in the afternoon. My father reaches for me. His eyes are fixed and wide, brown pools. I see, he says, her. His bloodied hand is light on my head, and then he goes. Cloth and cold flesh are left. Dead. Sounds come as if through water. Wind whistling through a window somewhere. Blood hitting the floor sounds like tick, tick, tick. I press my face to the face that was his. It's cool India rubber. The bright air turns a carousel. Tom stirs in the corner, white. I think about him, about what Shakes thinks of him, about what other people might think. I think of her, and my being goes cold. I saw nothing but Papa's dark shadow, his blood. But she was here. He saw her. She took his life. Where is she now? Tom, I say. He raises a gray face. Something clings to the corner of his mouth. Take it, I say. The ring gleams white and red in Tom's warm, trembling palm. Take it. From me to you, I say. Now leave. Go now. Run. When Tom doesn't move, I shouted over his protests. I slap his hands away. He tries to hold me. Go, I say. Go, go, go. Until he goes. When he's gone, I sit. I am small and dry inside. The tears that stream down my face are nothing to do with me. My habit wet again, this time with blood. The scent of it is heavy in the air. It seems an age since this morning, an age since the rock, the sunshine, the air. Did it happen? It's impossible. Nothing has ever happened or will ever happen again. I have always sat here with the sticky, wet red drying on me, clutching the cooling corpse. Without doubt, this is my doing. The great, great depths of my stupidity are revealed. My errant carelessness, my arrogance. I'd thought the rules didn't apply to me. Papa told me, he warned, but I didn't believe. I didn't believe in her. I thought I could do what I wished, and the cost is beyond bearing. I closed the eyelids over his dull, staring eyes. It's not easy. They want to stay open. I sit. I move beyond feeling. Grief, loss, what do these strange, weak words have to do with the jagged tear, the rent that goes right through the heart of me? My father is dead, and I killed him. It should have been me. I should have known that it would come to this. Perhaps I cannot see her, but I understand now what Papa was trying to say. She is in everything. She's all the sickness of the world, but also our own particular plague, just for us, the Villarcas. I speak to her in my mind. I ask her to come. I beg her to take me, I plead. I, who am now the last of us. Too late. In the distance, the keening of oak. A door. Someone is coming now. Chapter 6. Charles Danforth. October 11th, 1881. More tissue samples today. Alonso and I take it in turns now. Why should we both suffer? The cellar was quiet. I did not turn on that ghastly electric light, but carried my own lamp. The rabbits lie, panting and still, bound tight about their midriffs with white linen. There is the smell, not unpleasant, of basilicum powder and carbolic. With their heads on their paws, in their human bandaging, they have the appearance of a conceit, dreamt of by some satirical illustrator. The field hospital, perhaps. I did what was necessary. As I moved about the room, their gazes followed me, bright, showing me back myself in each dark, nut-like eye. I did not like the sounds they produced before, much like an eagle's scream, but I'm tempted to say that I liked their silence less. As I came to the end of the row, I saw that the old buck, I forget the absurd name Alonso has bestowed upon him, had escaped his dressings. The rabbit had pressed himself into the corner of his box, small and furred and brown. At his throat, the bandage hung slack from his neck where a neat rusty mark betrayed the tracheal incision. The mess of white linen and cheesecloth lay in the corner of the cage, brown and yellow stained, much clawed as if he had attempted to bury them. I opened the door and made to take him, forgetting in that instant. He turned to flee, laying bare his other side, and showed me my mistake. I saw our handiwork full well. He is an anatomy lesson. Along his left flank, the hide and flesh are neatly reflected back and excised. The anterior ribs are sawn away and blunt. Beyond them, there is a warm cavity through which can be seen the pulsing, the inner workings. The gentle rise and fall of the exposed lungs. Pink they are and pretty, looking like soft crepe for a party. The network of blue vessels runs through his exposed landscape. As he shifted, there was a glimpse of the spleen, protruding deep red like the tip of a tongue. The blackened areas scattered here and there show where we have taken tissue and cauterized with the hot iron. A loose swag of purple bowel hung plump by his hind leg. All this I have seen before, and I had my own part in its doing. But in that moment, well, as I wrapped him, taking care not to touch with my fingers the exposed parts, he began to make a sound, which I had not thought possible. It was very like a tin whistle, but mournful. I soon saw that it was merely my handling, which produced a compression of the lungs, sending air through the puncture in his throat, his larynx. The sound acted upon me, however. It was ineffable, and I cannot say I am yet recovered. Afterward, I went up to the kitchen and, after some hunting, found an onion. I brought it down and left it inside the door of his cage. He did not look at it or me. I do not know if he will eat it, or if it will do him harm, or if rabbits are partial to such food. Now I am half inclined to go and take it away again. I do not know what to do. Oh God, I am tired. October 12th, we go on. The days are long and the nights are wordless. Exhaustion takes us both to its bosom at dusk. There is no sound at the board but each man's private consumption. Afterward, we slump in our dusty chairs and drink, deep and long. Eventually, I take myself to my rest, uncertain of my steps and with a thick head, only to rise the next morning, cursing, to begin it all over again. Alonso's hair seems to be dark again. It is streaked now with black, creating a strangely pleasing effect, somewhat like a badger. Could he be dyeing it? I cannot summon the courage to ask. He looks perhaps 50 now, rather than 70. Raw blood improves him. I cannot say it does the same for me. My visit has stretched on and on. It must end now. I have said I will return here next month in order to be present for the next stage, where we will introduce the contaminant into the healthy host. I cannot believe it will work. I begin to doubt our thesis most seriously. Truthfully, I do not think I will come back. I can concoct some excuse when the time comes. It will be good to return to my life, Spartan as it is. I think of my cheerless little room with some relief and find myself dwelling on Mrs. Healy's unlovely physiognomy with something like longing. The doing of great things is all very well, but there is comfort in monotony and the performance of one's duty. My practice no doubt suffers in my absence. I do not like Babcock, much as I try, and I was loath to leave matters in his charge. Truthfully, I think him knucklehead. I believe he will inflict his antiquated notions on my patients and perhaps even cup them. But enough. It does not bear thinking of. Suffice to say that I will be relieved to take up the reins again. I have told Alonso of my departure. He said little, but made me a brandy flask to take below. Drink has become necessary for us to bear one another's company and for the continued performance of duty. The cellar begins to smell quite noisome. This unseasonable heat begins to wear on me. It is out of tune. There is still no rain. The countryside is restless. The autumn berries are full on the bramble, beside the trembling butterflies and the bumbles, The flowers hang heavy in their strange bloom, and the stale air is redolent of their perfume, and yet the trees are bare. The birds do not know what to do. Everywhere are swallows and geese who should have departed weeks past for sunnier climes. They circle in the air, silent and attentive. There is a forced lushness and fruitfulness on the land, as if it waited for a blight. October 13th, we do not progress. I have an influenza at present, which gives me a thick head and a languor. Today, I attempted to work but found myself rapidly overcome. Everything begins to look like flesh and bone to me. In haste, eyes like black and white wheels and a balding head. Get out, good God. I shall put this diary on the other side of the room at nights. By the by, the heat does not abate. October 15th, do not look into her eyes. Do not, my God, the eyes, my diary was in the drawer, which was locked. The key was in my pocket, in my coat, hanging up on the other side of the room. Yet the book was open before me, ink and pen dragging great blots across the page. Perhaps I should tie my own hands. October 18th, I write barricaded in my room. I have understood at last the nature of my visit here. It is vengeance. My life is in peril. I will lay out events as they happened, precisely. Yesterday, overcome with lassitude, I strolled onto the moor. I felt in need of air. The heat is relentless. As for the work, we have not succeeded in perfectly preserving the tissue without killing the infection, and so a transfer is as far away as ever. We proceed like insatiable butchers. The cellar air is thick with rot and pain. My limbs were glad to feel their length again. My heart lifted with each stride. When the house was well behind me, I found myself a perch behind a tumble of great stones and sat to feel the sun. It was a good thing to do. All around me was the moor, green and gray, and the little twisted rowan trees, which bend so obediently to the wind in these parts, their berries crimson darts against the dull land. It is a salutary thing to sit and observe nature, which cares nothing for my travails. I saw a sheep with a late lamb, newborn, I fancy. Not an hour before, it made a charming picture. The lamb, all disobedient legs and determined certainty, and you encouraging it. I watched its trials, becoming engrossed in its efforts to stand, wincing at each tumble. When it achieved uprightness and took its first unsteady steps, I found myself moved beyond reason and had to turn away. It occurred to me that the lambs might be an enviable lot, to possess no intellect or curiosity or duty to God or to mankind, to have a purpose so simple and pure, to desire to stand, to puzzle at it, to strain and so achieve it, and then walk away into a sheep's life, toward a sheep's death. Alonso would say, and I can hear his tone, that this is, in short fact, exactly the manner in which the large part of humankind passes its existence. I was thus engaged in reflection, a frown on my face and a stick in my hand, slapping at the heather. Men in idle moments, I find, will always seek a stick and something to hit. When I heard a sound like a saw drawn badly across the grain of the wood. Startled, I perceived then the crabbed figure of Shakes traversing the crest of the hill, silhouetted against the moor, making his way east. His back, turned toward me, shook, perhaps with the cough that racks his frame. He had not seen me, I was seized of a sudden with mischief. I rose from my seat and followed. I believe Shakes was acquired from a debtor's prison somewhere. Or perhaps I invented that. He is from Devon originally. There can be no doubt. His vowels proclaim it. I cannot like the man. He hangs on Alonso. Alonso will break his pen, and before he has done more than curse at it, Shakes will be at his side with a new one or mending the old, standing very close, seeking to breathe, it seems to me, his master's breath. And the man looks at me. This may not sound like provocation, but to be regarded in silence from under craggy narrow brows for minutes on end quite puts me out. I think him overly and particularly attached to Alonso. I followed him across the moor, stumbling a little in my haste. He moves at a sharp clip. I kept low, behind stands of heather, and darted from the cover of boulder to gorse bush. I thought at one time he was sure to turn and threw myself to the floor, anointing myself liberally with dusty, cracked earth, but he did not, and after some time, I felt it safe to stand and walk behind. Bracken and moor rose all around. The great barrow sat, amber with autumn, on its distant hill. We crossed a clearing in the brush, which was strewn with stones. My foot struck some object, and I stumbled and nearly brained myself on another. It struck me then that the stones were not scattered on the ground, but had a semblance of order. Of a sudden, I perceived, as though I had walked unawares into a funeral, that we were in the confines of one of those barbarous old Britain villages that litter the hillsides. I stood within a house, a tiny dwelling place, smaller than my bedchamber at Raw Blood. The floor was grass, and heather furnished the corners. My foot was on the hearthstone. I was quite upset. No man had lived here for 1,000 years, but it was still a house. I took care to make my way out of the dwelling through the door, and not by hopping over the walls. By lucky chance, there was in my coat the flask that Alonso had filled again for me with brandy. It is a mighty remedy. My despond quite lifted, I was in a holiday humor. Shakes was singing in a light baritone, unexpected and pleasing to the ear. I paused to note some of the words, for they caught my fancy. I attempted transcription below from pencil notes. She spake, and 'neath the moon, she took my heart away. And if I am a hollow man, who art thou to know? Broke and flung awry I was, a pale man at the break of day, and I'll not sing for her no more for her my woe. No more her brock bright eyes for me, no more her sateen lips, no more with her at moonlight, a dancin', heel and toe, unintelligible here, the night tide dashin', last pleasure, something here, tasted, wasted long ago. Something, Devon lass, and all of Devon pleased, and if I am a white bone man, who art thou to know? Laughing though, my death it fell, I went why, heart at ease, a dreamin', all the time, oh, cheeks like early snow. Take my bones to crossways, hang by the moor, nonsense, unintelligible, where the white bone man, with the white bone hand, I'll take you Arl, as she took my heart, all them year ago. There was more in this vein, many verses warning of the white bone man, and his particular modes of vengeance, but the wind took the words quickly from his lips. Shakes moved eastward at a trot. His air of purpose drew me, irresistibly, as a child draws a wooden toy behind it on a string. I did not pay much attention to our route, and suddenly, I found that we were in a part of the moor that I did not know. We had in fact crossed Hamel down by some circuitous means, and were coming to the old post road. This road follows in its turn the old Roman way, and is therefore straight and well laid, though not often used. It is turned to turf and sand and not well trod, and by hanging back, I had no trouble concealing my footfall behind Shake's own wandering steps. More brandy was taken by me. Shakes came to a halt ahead, and I saw that our little way had joined a larger road. The perfume reached me before I saw what it was we had sought, although these were southern. Blooms and not the red campion, cuckoo flower, and wild garlic of my childhood. The sickly meadowsweet clung to my nostrils. This at least I knew. My distress reached its summit. I made to turn too late. Flowers, all together in sickening banks. It is only twice in every lifetime that so many are assembled. At weddings and at death. I was young again. I walked once more toward that broken crossroads beyond the tumbled church wall. I caught once more the scent of my father's grave and heard my mother weep. The blooms lay on parched earth, plucked strands of heather and foxgloves and briar flowers, eyebright, honeysuckle, gorse, yellow cinquefoil, and oxeye daisies. A little stone lay at the head of the mound. It is with trepidation and grave conscience that the faithful man considers a roadside grave. The soul of a suicide is an abomination rightly excluded from the consecration of the churchyard. But this mound with its cloak of color did not rouse disgust. It bore an air of pilgrimage. I had forgotten Shakes. He stood like the stone beyond us, with his eyes on my face, and I perceived with horror that my efforts at concealment had been for nothing. There was no surprise in his look, but all the fine gullies and wrinkles of his visage were wrought with silver, as if a jeweler had been at work on him. The tears flowed steadily, never spilling and yet forming a mask of reproach. "You follow me, Dr. Danforth," he said. "You think yourself so mighty that even this is your concern." I smiled and stammered. He drew himself up, straighter and younger. He was tall and powerful, standing sentinel over the moor. "This is none of yours," he said. I do not know what to say, I told him. I am mad to have intruded on you so. I cannot excuse it. I wanted to feel the air, and then I stopped. It was worse to give reasons. They were thin. I did not myself know my cause. "I look after him," Shakes said. I looked after her too. His eyes were on the grave. Mary Hopewell, or she was. When I met her, his wizened face softened. It was both grotesque and fascinating, 1,000 tiny folds collapsing into one another. "I have been with them through all of it," he said. "But you are nothing. You are like the leeches who fasten to the calf in the mire. You take blood to eat." I thought to give the man answer, and angrily, but Shakes seemed suddenly to stand at a great distance from me. I turned and ran, making I know not what sounds, the sandy bottom of the road undulating before me, and I was fallen with a stinging blow, mouth filled with fine shale, before I realized that I too was blinded with weeping. I saw, In that moment, the true nature of my state. I was now very heavily under the influence of an opiate, which in all likelihood had been in the flask of brandy. Drugged. I thought to turn, to retrace my steps, but the path that had been so true beneath my feet turned into sedge that grasped at my ankles. I fell. When I opened my eyes, I could see the heather bells waving before my face, but I could no longer tell which was air or which the peatier. My tears ran upward along my face. Was it the springy turf that lay beneath me, or had I indeed dropped off the world? I was pressed against the cold, unyielding sky and could find no way to return to mortal ground. Death follows me here. Every place I turn, I am confronted with his silence. All my building of little walls and the strings that I used to bind together my life are for nothing. All are mown down and cut. I am collapsed like a puppet in a cheap vaudeville. I thought I was a man, but I am wooden, forgotten. I lie in a pile in a dark corner of a hideous theater. The monsters that move behind the wings are hungry. Their fetid breath reaches me like the touch of fever. There is no light, not here, save that cast by a hideous moon. It turns its blind gaze on me like a worm, searching and indifferent. Only the hungry maw waits. When I felt it draw me in, I rejoiced. Let it be done with, I cried. The jaws took my feet lovingly, and the cool throat was like a haven as I slipped into it. I smelled the breath of 1,000 dead men as the beast licked up my calves. I will let you have it all, I vowed. Take this awkward parcel of flesh and let me return to the dark. The stars that wheeled overhead formed shapes, lewd and grotesque. They dimmed and flared orange, dancing a dance that I knew, though I was shamed for all my knowledge. The stench of my own frailty was too much for me to bear. I kicked to urge the swallowing on. The mouth was a vice. It threatened to crush my shins. I yearned for that deliverance. Break and scatter this ill-assorted assemblage, I prayed. I sank. The voices were old and slow. They discussed the binding of my hands. They spoke of one's daughter, who had said last week that the marshmallow lay thick in this spot. It is a flag, said the other. You pay note to it. It turns you back from this country. Well, it should. ARR. There was a little rustling and the creak of a board. The voices tooted over me like concerned mothers. These sounds were so homely that I wept. I knew nothing after that for some time. When next they spoke, it was through a purple light, so beautiful I could not bear it. My hands were bound above my head, and I shivered with the cold. A skin of cold water was tipped up to my lips. I was consumed with thirst. My all was directed at lapping the water from the bladder, but when it was in my mouth, it tasted of the brackish dark and of the monsters I had seen. I understood everything in that moment, and with a cry, I let it flow from my mouth in the coming light of dawn like a child that cannot sup yet. October 19th. They brought me back to raw blood on an old door, off its hinges. Alonso tried to put hot rum in me. I would take nothing from his hands. Shakes looked at me from a corner, eyes bright. I paid them no mind, but went unsteady to the cellar. My shoulder was dislocated with the force of the winches used to draw me from the bog. It was my right, praise be, so the pain is not too bad to write or to wring a small neck. The fur and blood clings to my hands under my fingernails. I feel very like the lady in the play. It will not come off. Most were dead already. When was the last time they were tended? Those that were not dead, I broke their necks. We have all suffered enough. I think I wept as I did it. I have closed my ears to the song of mortality and refuted my vocation as a keeper of reason and fact. My hand and mind protest even as I write the words. How much better for all mankind and creation that such things never were, and that such betrayals never came to pass. After it was done, I stood for a time. The candle guttered. The cellar walls glistened, peculiar. The corpses looked very small in the uncertain light. I went to the last cage and touched him on his stiff, thick-furred shoulder. I do not know what I thought would transpire. Absolution? From a rabbit? Actaeon, I told the dead thing. I recall it now. That was your name. Presently, standing among the hutches with the door swinging to and fro, I became prey to a strong sensation of being watched. As I turned and turned about, I caught always something at the corner of my eye. Some gangling thing. I was caught, held as if by mortar to the ground. My feet would not obey me, but kept me in place as they do in dreams. I shrieked then, and the candle shuddered, threw glimpses of unknown things against my frenzied eye, a hideous long shape, an elongated shadow that danced at my feet, following me, as shadows do, across the floor. I turned and ran from that charnel house. How could I have thought it a place dedicated to knowledge and reason? They were rabbits only, true. That my actions were a deliverance to them, I know. So why does this act weigh so heavily upon me? Why does my conscience so protest? From the very first, I never judged Alonso by the standards I apply to other men. He has been for me a person apart from rules and even morals, a creature of exotic charm and instinct, and I had thought, integrity. I did him grave wrong once, but I ask myself now if this was the greater one, to allow our friendship to proceed along such lines, to be restrained by undue deference to his mind and his character, so that we are brought to such a pass as this. He is gone. His scientific mind has gone. This has been a madman's errand. I cannot credit that I was borne along by it. Such is the power of remembrance, of fondness. For a time, it may persuade the willing mind that black is, indeed, white. But I am no longer willing. I go now to beard the lion in his den. I do not know what will result. I will secrete the diary in a crack under the floorboards. If something happens to prevent my return, it will not be easily found. I waited for him in the study, in the gloaming. I did not hear him come. I looked up, and he was standing before me, a great shape against the dusk. In the dark, Charles? His great presence is so striking. It is easy to overlook how deep, how musical is Alonso's voice. He lit the lamps, and their warm, homely yellow cast the illusion of cheer on the room. I watched him. Yes, I was right. He has gained flesh. He looks young now, as if his time in Italy had drained his life and raw blood restores him. His skin has regained its old warm luster. His eyes are luminous. Charles, he said. The rabbits. I will not let you do it any longer, Alonso. You do not like it, he said heavily. Nor do I. But we could have consulted. I thought that I would die in that bog, and that moment brings realization to a man. I have understood everything. I doubt that, he said. Alonso, it is finished. Though no doubt of average talent, I am still a doctor. I do not have an ague or a cold. I am not a drunkard. It is very simple. You have been sedating me with an opiate since my arrival at Raw Blood. True enough, he said. The laudanum is in the wine? In the food? He said, both. What is my intake? I asked by the minim. He reached into his pocket and I jumped, but it was only a pencil he sought. I shuffled for a scrap of paper. I found only a crumpled railway timetable. Alonso took it from me and scratched. He handed me the results. It is an estimate only, he said. Administered 13 minims in coffee or similar. 8 before noon 12 minims in cider or food. 2 after noon 14 minims in wine, brandy, or food. 8 afternoon 17 minims by a pipette early morning while sleeping equals 56 minims. You write like a dying spider, I said, crawling across wet sands. That is over 5 grains of morphia per 24 hours. So much. It must be high at night, he said. He grimaced. It must. Charles, you of all men know my intent. Your intent. I do not know, but I do know that you have become a fearful thing. I was abruptly disgusted beyond measure, with myself, with my persuadable nature, and with him. I wished to punish us both, for his hubris and for my acceptance of it. I found him beyond all moral sense, but I found myself despicable, and it was worse. Sit, I said. Please. He did so and looked at me in surmise. I have solved it, you know, I said. The mystery of the raw blood ghost. Charles. He started toward me, imploring, and for a moment I was moved by the distress in his great eyes. Before I recalled myself, do you recall Pinel? I said, a minor talent, but a solid one. He describes that particular state, Manier sans delire. Shall I translate, or will you? It is madness without delirium. An intelligent madness, rational and by design. Moral insanity. And Koch, I cannot call psychiatry a science, but I do not despise his work, has diagnosed a state of mind he calls the psychopathish. The psychopath, I suppose you could say, in English. What are the hallmarks of the psychopath? 1. Very likely it is hereditary. Some insanity in the lineage passed down. Alonso's eyes were fixed on me. Go on, Charles, he said. I begin to follow your thinking. Your mother murdered your father, I said. It was much reported. The Devon demoness. You yourself have told me of it once. Only the once. I know that it was never proved in a court of law. And I know we do not speak of it. But, Alonso, the time for tact and equivocation has passed. The history of the Villarca family is uniquely bloody. The second distinguishing characteristic of the psychopathish is a moral blindness amounting to an enjoyment of others' pain. That ghostly figure that crept into your servants' rooms, attempting to suffocate them in their sleep, that violated that girl in such a way that she could no longer hold to her sanity. It was a horror, but it all belongs to human action. I see before me the raw blood ghost. For who could it have been, Alonso, but you? Similarly, I do not believe it an accident that the Gilmore child was taken deathly ill on your grounds. You are responsible for his suffering. You contrived his death. You refused him treatment, but let him lie outside, where you could observe. I would not let any child enter this house, he said. If I keep people from me, it is much the better for them. On that last point, I must concur, I said. I do not know what happened to you, Alonso, in the years since I saw you. I do not know what evil has touched you, but you have acquired a need to inflict pain on others. Human subjects not being always readily available, you devised the experiment with the rabbits. Under cover of science, you could indulge with impunity the impulses that are necessary to your character. I paused here, for there was something rising in my gullet. I thought of Actaeon, and I tasted bile. I am nauseated to have participated in this ghoulish theater. Third, here I faltered a little, for I knew myself to be culpable in making Alonso what he was. An early degenerate influence or way of life can set the mechanism of the mania in motion. And that is my responsibility also. For we were morally degenerate, you and I, when we were young. It beggars belief, he said, and his tone was acid, that you have found a way to place this at the door of our degeneracy, if that is what you insist passed between us then. In the low golden lamplight, his face was wrathful. I shuddered. I said, I am sorry, so sorry for my part in it. I fear what passed between us in that fashion may have contributed to your madness. Also, I caused your opium addiction. I am immeasurably sorry. I must remind you, it was through error, not through design. Here, Alonso stirred. So you have always said. Manning's cure. Is that the end? I thought of all the evenings we had sat exactly thus, in 2 armchairs, arguing, debating. That was a simpler world. Yes, I said, exhausted. Charles, you cannot believe this. You are spinning wild falsehood and convincing yourself in the process. He was imploring. His face was open. I steeled myself against the feelings that rose in me. He is not the man I knew. It is but a cunning semblance put on to keep me in check. I do not think you have killed yet, I said. I think you will, though. I do not, for instance, know. What was your plan for me, for your revenge? Bring me thoroughly under the influence of the drug, and then my throat was dry. I also believe that behind your madness, my friend remains. So I appealed to him. I asked him to think. Think what you do, Alonso. I arose. I go tomorrow. At first light. If you think to intrude on me in the meantime, be aware. I have my pistol handy. I turned on my heel and went to my chamber. It is so hot. Where is the rain? I have flung open the windows to the night. There is a scent of smoke, a bonfire perhaps, which pervades the air. I have also brought the little dog, Punch, into my room. He is accustomed to sleep in the old stable, but I think he will not mind the change of accommodation. Punch is a small, hairy terrier of the best kind, full of grumbling and sudden thoughts. He is good proof against vermin, of which I have a horror. Last night, as I was getting into bed, a mouse ran clear across my foot. A truly unsavory experience, and I think it will not happen with Punch in the room, for he has an admirable, bloodthirsty nature. The only part of his character that does not please is his firm belief that I deserve and desire his trophies to be brought to me. He will not take them away again. The dog will sleep at the foot of my bed, which will be a nice, cozy thing. I have need of another creature near me as I sleep tonight, of the presence in the room of another living heart that beats. Alonso has knocked at the door. I think I jumped a foot in the air. My entire nervous system is singing and prickly with fear. I have my pistol trained upon the door, I said. I took up the poker from the fireplace. His voice came muffled through the panels. Charles, you do not understand. The laudanum. I have it here. You must take it, or it will be the worse for you. I said, do not threaten me. That is not what I mean, he said. It offers protection enough, I said. I have heard enough. Damn your eyes, he said. I have borne patiently with your insults to me under my own roof. I have endured your crude conspiracies and aspersions on my character. I have allowed your self-deception to pass unchallenged. If you do not take it, Charles, you will regret it. You are a monster, I said. I do not know you. There was only silence then, so I suppose he went away. I turned the key in the lock twice. Punch and I will sleep in princely state tonight, behind good solid oak. I will keep some vestige of my damned pride. I know that it will be a testing night. I am prepared for the worst. Narcotic withdrawal is not a pretty thing. To look into Alonso's eyes, which I have loved, and see the malice that sits therein, I will never forget it. I am swept through with sadness as if by a wind. What will happen to him? Assuredly, he must be dealt with. He cannot be allowed to go free. I see in Alonso a man who has allowed his past to rule him. He carries his parents' demise with him always, as some carry a miniature of their beloved in a locket. He is in love with his tragedy. I will not become him. Alonso may be ruined. I need not be. I have been trying to forget, to obliterate. How foolish. Did I think perhaps that the Lord did not know of my mistakes? Assuredly, he does. I must face him with an open heart. My secrets are manifold and sinful. I have kept them in a box in the depths of my soul. Now, I will try another way. I will acknowledge my wrongdoings. I will atone. Strangely, I am full of hope. I am resolved that this sad chapter shall not be without result. Upon my return to London, I shall take new lodgings. Farewell, Mrs. Healy. I only bear with her, after all, because she does not mind too much my nocturnal pursuits. Of course, by Coke's definition, I, with my moral aberrations and behaviors, also fall into the category of psychopathish. But I will give all that up. That sordid toil is exhausting in the end. I shall inquire for a country practice. I will tell Mrs. Bantry to prepare Meg to join me in a few months. I had not thought I should ever have her with me. I thought myself unfit for the young, but I believe some form of peace is not beyond my grasp. Perhaps I will go to Grimstock to fetch Meg myself. Perhaps I will look once more on those cold, gray hills where I was born, and perhaps it will not be as terrible as all that. Redemption. I am testing the word on my tongue. By the longest of paths, by trials of fire and long endurance, I have come closer to God. So, strange as it may seem, I owe Alonso thanks. in the end. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Proverbs 14 verse 2. O God, preserve Elivrus from T evil Y handshakes, so I fay I cano WRT it, I have e'en such a thing. Still my limbs, still my beating heart. What to fix on, what to think, or be, my God, my dear God. And prayer is of no use, for did I not cry out the Lord's Prayer? And it went unanswered. I thought Alonso was the fearful thing. I was wrong. Oh, God, her eyes, what deep hole in teach. Oral did that white thing crawl wrong. The slender tips of 10 white fingers reaching for my here T she ha, I cur GRMS. How C was put there. WH would be capable of Sue ED? And how could I not see? My merciful Lord, and the eyes dawn praise God. Praise God for the light and for the day. I am on the hill in my nightshirt and overcoat. I am chilled to the bone, but I could not spend a moment more within the house. I would have fled from my room in the night, but the thought of encountering that monstrous thing in a dark corridor, seeing the guttering light fall upon that white form, it could not be borne. I did not sleep again, but lit the candle and counted the hours until dawn. When blessed day became perceptible through the quarries, I rose from the bed. All was strange. Shadows fell too short or too long, and the pale, gray light abused my aching eyes. I could not feel relief. It was gone, yes, but it had heard my feeble cry and responded. It had a mind and a will. I shiver now with dread, for it is filled with overwhelming and alien intent. I strenuously avoid naming it, but I am an observer and a man of science. Let me not forget it. All must yield to reason. I will diagnose. Postulation the first. The severity of the situation can be assessed to some degree by establishing what was the fate of the dog. The resolution that was needed to screw myself to the sticking place was almost beyond my power. I sat on the grass, stroking it as if it were alive, feeling its texture and breathing in the air, my ears filled with the hilarity of an early morning cuckoo. This did my heart good. What do the grass or the birds know of the treachery of man or the foulness of that thing within? I should have obeyed those notes from my drugged self. I told me to flee. That is what I should have done. When I was calm, I went into that place quickly. It did not take long to find what I sought, and I came out again within a few minutes. Nothing occurred, but the very walls are loathsome to me now. Punch was curled still under the window seat. He was quite cold and dead. I have brought him outside, not wishing to leave him in that place. He was a good little dog. He did well what dogs are meant to do. I became occupied at this juncture with the cramps, the dizziness, and the tremors that shook my frame. We were sitting thus when I heard the sound of someone approaching from the copse. I was not frightened. I think that I may never feel fear again, for something has been taken from me that will not be given back. I noted presently that Alonso was seated beside me. "You have seen her," he said. I nodded my head. "You had locked your door, and I could not get into you." He spoke gently, as I have heard him do, an age ago, to children and horses. "You are not well." He slid his hand under my overcoat and laid it on my back, which was wet as though I had been exposed to a sudden spring rain. He went to his pocket and brought forth the vial. I made to take it, but he produced a syringe case from his pocket and fitted the vial in. I saw it was an ampoule. "Do you want it?" he said. The itch on my flesh was too much to be believed. My very fingers curled with wanting it. He nodded and said, "Better this way." He took my arm and found a vein, his fingers gentle, and it was in. I think he attended to himself after me. I do not recall, for the world was turned to butter. Presently, I felt that he lay along my side. Both of us turned upward like daisies in the vertical sunlight under the puzzling sky. What is it? What manner of thing? What I saw in the night. My soul is riven by it. It is impossible that God and that thing both exist. One or the other is a fairy tale. "Tell me what it is you saw," he said. I told. I was mildly irritated to find that I trembled as I spoke. Her wounds. It bleeds. Her shoulder was dripping. She had a shorn head and scars like I know not what. It was like the land under the moon. There was a sound, I said, like creaking, or of stone, rubbed upon stone. Very old machines, which ground together like death. There was smoke, which filled the air like brimstone. The room seemed ablaze, though there was no heat. Flame licked up the walls as though we were trapped in some prison in the depths of hell. I felt once more the horror on me. Is she a phantasmagoria couched in withdrawal from the morphia? Do you think it is? No, I said. She stood there, white and rotten. Once again, the weakness came on me, and I was convulsed with fear. I grasped his arm. "And the dog," I said. "It died of fear. How do you live? Knowing that such horror is in the house? Do you not see?" His hand trailed along the line of the collar of my nightshirt, leaving soft runnels in my flesh. Strange to say, Alonso said, she does not trouble me, the fact being so plain, perhaps, that I am already damned. Other things haunt my dreams. A small blessing given to a fiend. No, as you may have guessed, it is the laudanum that keeps her away. I always know when she is near, but it is as if a veil separates us and she cannot get through. Postulation the second. Opiates offer a degree of protection. The apparition can have no effect if the subject's mind is so dulled. The residual laudanum in my system saved me from her. It was her, I said, that you wish to study, not congenital disease. We have no sway over that thing. Did you expect that we would shake a microscope at it and it would go away? Why did you think that she travels in the blood? Why is it so impossible that an intelligence, an agency such as her, should use a lineage, procreation as a vehicle? Sometimes, Charles, I feel her. I feel her here. He tapped a blue vein, bulging in his pale wrist. Within, coursing in my blood, he shook himself. You had no right to kill the rabbits. Once more, Charles, you have ruined me. You have used me abominably, I said, abruptly furious. You play the victim, but you have kept me here under the claim of friendship, lied to me, and imperiled my life. I pointed toward Punch. You have used me worse than that dog. I do not deny it. I rose to go. Alonso reached up a long arm and grasped the collars of my nightshirt, pulling me to earth. He put his lips to my ear. "I do not understand God," he said. "But believe me, I begin to understand hell. And if I am to go there, I will do something first, and that is finish the work. Give me your notes." "Alonso," I said, "to speak plainly, you are addled with opiates. Once you were a clinician, a diagnostician of the first water, and a man of medicine. But I was a fool to follow you in this. It will not work. We have tried. It will not. And as for the methods, nothing right or good would cost our souls so. I have been wrong about a great deal. I grant it, but I am right in this." My eyes were clouded a little with tears, for the opium has dulled the fine razor of your mind. If you cannot see this, then it is as I had suspected. In truth, you are no longer a doctor. I removed his hand from me and went into my book. I tore the pages of our records from the spine, our tallies, our notes, our whole work. It was a cancer, I see it now. Remarkable that so much pain can be told in numerals in India ink. I set a match to the sad scraps before me. They burned without a sound, blue and gray and orange. He cried out and reached for them. I believe he would have buried his hands in the fire, but a breeze came off the moor then. The pages went with it easily, out of reach, whirling into the sky. We watched the tiny points of flame rise in the early morning air. I said to him, "We must find our way to that lighted hall by other means than the kitchen." His empty fingers trembled, held before him like a begging bowl. When he spoke, it was savage. 2 decades I have wandered in the wasteland. My sole comfort was that you were ruined also. You may be assured on that point, I said. My life, since we parted, has been nothing but a long mourning. I put an arm over his shoulder, which heaved and shook. The shape of him was familiar to my arms. I held for a moment the young Alonso. I did not know where I was. This time was overlaid by that, like magic lantern slides. I said, in the end, I have protected you, though I did not mean to do it. She would have taken you all those years ago, had you not been addicted to laudanum. Does that comfort you? He asked. His face shone with contempt. It should not. Do not spout such drivel at me. This was thrust upon me, and I am a servant, no, a slave to it. How it offends the mind. His hand was tight on my jaw. How my senses and my reason are revolted. Order, logic, science. These are the systems to which I was devoted. You took them from me, like a thief. You're in the right of it. I am no longer a doctor, for you took my profession. You owe me at the least your life. I am unhinged. I will suffer this until I die. I do not sleep. I do not eat. I am beset all around by this. There was no Manning's cure, Charles, was there? It was no error of judgment. I know you better than any man alive. You were afraid of your God. You made me a slave to opium, to punish me for what you desired. To give Alonso opium. A terrible lapse of judgment on my part, but a forgivable one. Solo el amor, etc., etc. All this is acknowledged. It was an accident. Well, here's the thing that I have never told, not to a soul. Our endeavor of 50 days was tainted from the start. He was everything that was bright, blinding to my eyes. I have said we were degenerate together, and it is so, but it was more than that. Degeneracy alone would have been bearable. I had lived with my shame all my life. I think they might have put me in the pillory in Grimstock had I not left. I am hardened to the fact of my degeneracy, but love I did not know. It is a terrible, terrible thing. I was unprepared for the great fall. I did not know, before Alonso, how it strikes you down like sickness, like madness. I was unprepared for the fear. I feared Alonso was not the true moral deviant that I was. I feared that he could not forever be satisfied with such a poor thing as me. I lay by him, wakeful in the night, thinking of the time when he would go for me. I thought God would take him to punish me. When Alonso said to me, that first night before the fire, "Do you know what it will be that you intend to administer?" I said that I did not. It was a lie. I saw that the time had come to act, to bind him to me. I took his life as sure as a knife in the heart. And in the end, he went from me anyway, so I destroyed the thing I love, and all to no purpose. "You're right," I said. There was no Manning's cure. "Very well," Alonso said. A tremor shook him. He sighed. "And I in turn will allow that I brought you here, willing to destroy you. I needed your eye for the work. And for you to be safe from her and fit to work, you needed opiates. I thought I did not care what happened to you. I thought it was justice. Your debt to me, as it were. But you came, and it did not feel like revenge. Strange to say, it was a great pleasure to be in your company." He passed a hand across his brow and grimaced. "I have deceived myself, Charles. I brought you to raw blood not for any purpose, save the simple one that I wished for you. I missed you. It was selfish and wrong." "No," I said, "it was not." We looked at each other, and it was the bleakest of things. Alonso said, "Once you had my trust and my love, but you thought God did not like it. Foolish, foolish. Why could you not make peace with it, your heart? Such utter waste," he said, "of our two lives." "I know," I said. "It is my fault. All mine. And I have seen today, her. I have seen that God is a farce. I have lived my life always half in shadow. And for what? To appease whom?" He soothed me with a strong white hand. His black hair fell across his brow. "You look so well now," I said. "You are better, Alonso. Younger. I do not know how it is so, but—" "Yes," he said, grim. "I think that is her doing. I think she likes us close." So what am I to do now, Charles? Trapped here at raw blood, in this dim half-death. What is my life to be? That I do not know. The world spun, liquid. Postulation the third. She is bound to the Villarcas, to raw blood. And they to her. The Villarcas sicken when away from raw blood. We are a fine pair, I said. The sodomite opium eaters. He said wearily, "You wear and wear away at things, Charles, but never really face them. You have the right to use me any way you choose," I said. "And I deserve to die." "No," he said. "That is precisely it. You do not. We must abandon grudges, revenge. Cease to quarrel over who wronged whom first and try to live. Let us try," he said, "to live in the morning light." I laughed a little. I was recently thinking something similar. You make it sound an easy thing. I took him quickly to me, to feel the shape of his back, the line of his fierce head. I kissed him. Then I stood and went down the hill. I did not look back. Come to the house, I said without turning, when you have buried the dog. Conclusion, there can be none. I recall, so many things, but in particular, one afternoon. We stood beside the river, drinking. We had been at the inns with some legal fellow or other who liked us, and then in rooms at the temple. Deep drinking in those deep stone arches, it gives a young man a sense of grandeur. The Thames was quiet in the afternoon. There seemed to be no living soul on the stretch. Everything was scented deeply with wisteria. We leaned over the river in the sunshine and saw ourselves in the swift brown water. Light played over Alonso's face. He was lit through willow trees, golden young. His cheek was full of the flush of pleasure. His eyes were wide, and the sun lay in them. He offered his hand to me. I took it. In the water, our reflections followed suit. This is a state of grace, he said. Nothing had yet occurred. None of those actions had yet been thought of that would bring us by slow degrees to this parlous state. I can see him now in my mind's eye. He will bury Punch on the moor, and he will take trouble to find a place that is seemly and high and fit. He will handle the corpse gently and bury it deep. He will cover the earth with stones. The foxes will not get it. I know all this because I know him as well as my own desires. Perhaps he will pray over the dog as if it had a soul. He is utterly heathen. He will come soon, for all that. A dog takes but a little hole. Make haste. Forgive me, God, in whose existence I can no longer trust. Forgive me, Meg, whom I did not tend as I should have. Most of all, I ask forgiveness of you, Alonso, my friend. I did not understand then the quality of action, which is not like thought. It is final. I do not seek redemption, not for myself at least. I hope that you may find your way out of the tunnel I led you down all those years ago. Perhaps contrition, freely offered and without condition, has a merit of its own. I truly hope so. I hope that it can turn the course of events in ways we cannot fathom. Perhaps it will aid you. This poor book. The cover is marked with tiny burns and with sprays of rabbit blood. The pages hang drunken from the binding. There are great ragged edges where others were torn away. A poor legacy. But it is all I have to leave to you, Alonso. It is my full and last confession. I make one request only, that my sister, Meg, should not be left to starve. I have nothing to bequeath. I throw myself on your mercy utterly. I am glad that I spoke the truth to you at last. I said those things that I could never have said had I not known that this was my last day. Perhaps it was the only honest day of my life. Please know, it is not for our long and sad history that I do this. Our sins seem as nothing in the face of the evil I have seen in the night. You do not comprehend what it is to look on her. You cannot. I have known, since before I heard your footsteps this morning on the hill, that this was my fate. Perhaps you will say that it is a cowardly choice, but there is no longer any choice for me. To see her is to know the vast terror that lies outside the circle of firelight, beyond man's ideas. The curtain has been torn back to reveal the gaping chasm in the world. Nothing endures. All is blackness. Horror. We are falling through the dark. We never cease. We never land. We drift in the endless void, suffering. There is no morning light. As I made my preparations, the day darkened. 1 minute passed. The room shone dim as if a hand had been clapped over the face of the sun. I was not surprised. It seemed right that the days and hours be out of joint. But then there came the sweetest sound that I have heard. I have gone to sea. I could not deny myself. Through the window, the grass is slick and gleaming. A gray sheet lies over the far horizon. Diamonds cover everything. They cling to the old glass and run down the panes. All things shiver and dance through their prisms. Even through the dry dust and sour smells of this house, I can catch that other scent. There is such kindness in it, the earth without, beneath the rain. I have it by me and ready, the rope. I have owed this for many years. I hereby discharge my debt freely and in hope. Chapter 7. Iris, 1915, Allswood Asylum. I'm 16. Weak sun across the floor. Mouth like cotton. Dust motes. The others are waking too. They stir gently in their beds like yellow chicks. Their movements are small and tentative as if they're already weary. Groans of aching joints. Somewhere, someone's sobbing. Morning, I suppose? They mostly keep me under. I'm not so good with times and days. The battered tin clock high on the wall. The yellow square clipped to the end of my bed that means dangerous. No visitors. No letters. The large blonde woman next to me stares, her eyes blue orbs. What time's the train? She asks. It's one of the many things I don't know. I stare back. She is fascinating in her trembling whiteness, like a milk pudding. What time? Hello, Julia, I say. Lovely day. She turns away with a sniff, leans as far away from me as her restraints will allow. I watch the second hand of the dented clock. I allow myself to think about him for 1 minute exactly. 1 minute each time I wake. No more, in case they see his name in my eyes. Lottie releases us from our night jackets. Everyone shakes their arms for a moment after to check they're still there. What time's the train? Not for hours yet, my love. I don't mind Lottie so much. The other, Doris, always tells Julia it left an hour ago. Out in the garden, I shuffle. I hug the fence, the wall, grimly. Once around the perimeter, twice. Sweat beads, drips from my nose. I shuffle on my weak, stiff legs until they loosen, until I can approximate a walk. It is better to be under the sky. At least there's that. At some point, Julia joins me. She walks beside me in silence. Her jowls shake. Did you kill your daddy? She asks. That's the word. No, I say. It was her. She nods. We walk. I killed the baby, she says. Didn't mean to. Right, I say. Sorry. I know, she says. Me too. We're all sorry. I say, we're not alike, you and I. I hurry away on trembling legs. Most of my waking hours are spent fighting the fear that I'll die in here. There's nothing to break the gray days. Might as well have chucked me down a well. It comes to the same thing. Sometimes I feel myself falling in the long dark. I think of Hervé, journeying through the black land of death to wake her father. If only it could be done. Food. I've been out for a while, not sure which one this is. Lunch or dinner, though. Breakfast is bread, and this is broth. A shiver, white wobbling flesh in the corner of my eye. Hello, Julia says. I don't. You're sad, I bet, she says. There's a bone in the heart of my broth. I trap it between the spoon and the bowl. Bone. Dull metal. Whose head should this be? I press with the spoon. A little crack, a good sound. We're all sad, she says. I know. You're different. But you're not actually so piped down. Seems unjust. Go away. Bollocks to you, she says fairly cheerfully, and when the bone is broken in little bits at the bottom of my bowl, I look up again, but she's gone. After soup, we're marched back into the ward. We lie flat, each on our cot. Lottie, Doris, Annie go around. They draw the canvas over us, fasten the buckles. Chinking dull metal, leather. All around the ward, the sounds of fastening up. They're quick. There are 3 of them, 30 or so of us. And sometimes, just sometimes, through the phenobarbital, someone remembers this. Not tonight, apparently. The sting of the needle. Annie moves off down the row. Don't have long, be quick. What? The more. It's a blustery day. Don't make it too good. Don't make it so that you can't bear it when you wake up here. Dusk is coming, but it's still low, golden light. It's clear from here to the sea. Faint blue line. Invisible sun sinking, an eerie glow in the white west. The clouds in that corner of the sky have golden rims. I say, look. No, forget that part. I'm alone. I'm walking up the path to Hator. Toes plant in the turf. Breath comes good, hard. The good squeak of damp grass under my boot soles. The land falls away and the wind rises. The strange metallic scent of gorse. It's blazing yellow. Must be spring. Something bounds across the path. Small, bright, long-legged. The color of warmth, blood, sunsets. It pauses, throws a stretched and spiny shadow. The fox stands, perfect and poised. One slender black forepaw raised. Red rusty fur, ears wide, petals on the narrow head. Young, not a cub, but only just. Great wild golden eyes hold mine. We look at each other, the fox and I. We're still, caught by the land, each other, the sky. The delicate muzzle curls. The fox snarls, silent and white. Tiny, perfect teeth. It's so fierce and so small. I grin at it, and it's gone like smoke. Glimpse of a brushy tail. Why didn't I ask more questions? Papa, why didn't I ask you everything about her? About yourself? About everything? I suppose I didn't believe, in those days, that people actually died. Not really. I've only ever loved 2 people. You can only begin to believe in death when it cuts you where you love. The muffling, the black. It closes over. Morning. Julia's wailing. It's clear why almost immediately. The stink is everywhere. Julia struggles in her night jacket. She wriggles. Her face is shiny with tears. Her blue eyes are perfect circles. Doris watches. Oh, That's dirty, she says. That's shameful. She takes a cloth from her waist and unbuckles Julia gingerly with fingertips. It's all over. The bed is slick with it. Revolting, Doris says. No use thinking you'll get a change. Linens is Tuesdays. You know that. Couldn't, Julia says. Her voice is thick. Couldn't stop. She cries a long, high, cracked note. It goes on and on. Around the ward, other voices take it up. Cracked keening. She set them off. Doris calls to Annie. To Julia, you've set them off. She tuts, hands on hips. Nasty, nasty, she says. You think about what you've done when you're sleeping in it tonight. The stench rises. All around, women shrieking. Julia doesn't argue. She quietens. Shame moves up her, through her face, until it enters her eyes. They become little glassy pebbles. She goes somewhere else entirely. We line up on the bench. Gray morning. Thin cloud. Wind flaps in our white shifts. We're straggling sheep. Eyes blue and black with sleep. I sit next to Julia. She stinks. She's shaking. Doris starts at the top of the line, moves down. She opens mouths. She pokes in them with a fine metal implement. She runs a finger around yellowing teeth, taps them with a fingernail, checking for looseness. Papery tongues, cracked mouths. We're a puzzled, shaky lot. Look, I say to Julia, sorry about before. Julia stares. A shining line of saliva drawn across the center of her chin like a wire. Sorry, I say, but she doesn't reply. When Doris comes to me, I let her come in close. I wait until her pink hand hovers blurry and huge by my nose. I close my jaws neatly fast. I bear down until I taste blood. It's only as I'm sinking, the needle sweet in my arm, urgent hands battering me about the head, the blood all red and tinny between my teeth, that I see it, Julia smiled. Nothing after that for quite some time. Morning. Again. Which? No matter. When Lottie comes to me, she doesn't take off the night jacket. She loosens the buckles at the back, sits me up. Too late. I see she has the needle in her hand, and I want to weep. I can't bear it, going back down into the black cellar so soon. Soother, Lottie says. No, keep still. Just a soother this time, because you've someone to see you. It doesn't seem likely. The phenobarbital washes up and down, cleans all the feelings away. A man comes down the ward. Flat, shining hair. A strand escapes as he sits down beside me, hangs, heavy with brilliantine, over one eye. The firm line of his cheek like the curve of a tunnel. He strokes his lapel in slow, small movements as if the suit were a house-trained animal. His smile is shy. He smells of pipe smoke, of lemons, clean skin. His brow amazes with its smoothness, the color of warm bread. Martin smiles. You're awake, he says. That's fine. I smile back. My tongue is thick, disobedient, inert. But inside, I am singing. I want to tell him how his face brings the taste of heather, the sound of swallows in the eaves, the clear brown river. He has brought raw blood into the long, dirty room. I ache with my happiness. I should have trusted that someone would come. Martin seems an odd choice, but I should have known that someone would. Of course, this couldn't go on forever. It wouldn't make sense if life were so cruel. Martin smiles, I smile, and I have 1,000 questions I want to ask him. But no, at Ellswood, the walls have ears and hands and eyes and needles. Everyone knows that. All that in good time. I whisper, so light it's barely a breath on the air, Martin, thank you. Home. Martin smiles into my eyes and says, I'm Dr. Goodman. Do you remember me? It's a pleasure. May I call you Iris? Yes. I try to say Martin, of course, I remember. Cranium, mandible. He takes a tongue depressor from his breast pocket. My jaws are gently parted, and the depressor pokes like a dry stick. He watches, his eyes kind. I was never permitted to be a guest at Raw Blood, he says, but I am quite happy to have you stay in my house. He smiles at his joke. As long as you like. He waits until my breathing has steadied a little. Fastidious, he takes his handkerchief from a breast pocket. The cloth looms. It's rough on my slippery face. His fingers are scented with lemon. He says, that's quite enough of that. You don't know it, but you're in luck. Real luck. You can be passed over to me for treatment without reservation. Do you realize? The 1913 Act was your salvation, and you did so well. There was no trouble obtaining the certificates. It will all be different now, Iris. I stare at the yellow square at the bottom of my bed. Of course, no visitors. This is no reprieve. Raw Blood is gone. Father is gone. Tom is gone. There is only this room. There will only ever be this room. The air dirty and laden with sorrow. I turn my head and snap at his hand, but it's gone. The empty click of my teeth. He says equably, yes, you're fond of that, I hear. The biter. The world shifts. He's lifting me gently. Swimming in phenobarbital, he says, pain. Barbaric. And bedsores. I am very sorry, but we can begin to treat this rationally with modern techniques. I know your history, I know your case. I have an excellent impression of your mental state before, which will inform your treatment. It is a piece of luck. He spits each word delicately into the air. I wish you to understand that this is none of your doing. How to begin? The behavior of the brain. We are only so far removed from the savage. When a leopard tears apart a bull, it is obeying the promptings of its mammalian brain, which has a similar structure to our own. We cannot expect, simply because we have put on linen and eat off china, that this urge will never manifest in ourselves. We wish to tear flesh and also to be moral human beings. This struggle can lead to a disintegration of the personality, particularly in women. The violent animal is at war eternally with the natural impulse of a gently reared young lady. For let us not forget, the leopard is also natural, and he is strong. In some, very strong indeed. In you, I think, it is a congenital defect. There is a long history of it in your family. Again, it's so important to stress this. It's not of your making. You yourself have said that your father warned you of it. No, I say. The rage rises, welcome. He warned me of her. her. Well, I would have done the same. I would have told the story in a way that would not appall or frighten a child. Believe me, Iris, I find no fault with your father. He did what he could, but she did not kill him. Did she? She was there. I can see how it looks, I say, but it was her. She brushed me with her cold fingers. My father's gaze on my face, the cold space at my back, the thrill that ran through me. I see her. Benno can't quite stop the tide that rises, threatening. There is no her. There is only you. Goodman is curt. I want to say you've got it wrong, you parasite, you llama-faced nobody, you. But I can't. Because, of course, whatever part you played, I did it really. Because Papa warned me. But I would not listen. Tell me, Iris, he says, how long can a mind be torn between two divergent impulses without fracturing? I do not know. But in due course, that is what takes place. A fracture. A young woman raised in relative isolation. Few pastimes. The masculine impulse encouraged by masculine pursuits, anatomy, and so forth. Then the catalyst, what was it? Something. Some form of sexual incontinence, perhaps. That would be usual. And the leopard is free. He mimes a paw swiping across the air. You say that you do not recall your crime. I think you cannot acknowledge the actions of your savage other self. Your distress and your grief are not acknowledged by you because you have shut them up. They are locked in the cage. They are the property of the leopard. I can help you with this. I can tame the leopard. I can make him safe. And you can live contented in the gentle state that was meant for you. I will speak to you man to man, Iris, he says. I will be blunt. The world is being torn apart outside. His hand holds mine, warm and firm. We are engaged in the war to end all wars. All over Europe, the hungry leopards are loose. He sighs, and for a moment, his voice forgets about the lecture. It is unconscionable what is happening, but it will end, and God willing, there will be a world to live in after it ends. You may partake of it. You have a real chance for rehabilitation. No more drugs. Exercise. Responsibility. Restitution. Now, will you help me? Reprieve here, after all, perhaps. A hidden chance. I should add, he says, smoothing his lapel, that you have received some letters. I have these safe. I have read them, of course. I deem them not too inflaming or exciting, so you may have them if we can agree. I prepare my tongue, my mind carefully. Must get this right. Thank you, Dr. Goodman, I say, for your care and attention. And I will help you. Martin sits and licks the tip of his pencil. His gray eyes shine. There is only one person who would write. Clouds boil overhead. The light in the garden's like the depths of an aquarium. We move along the wall, away from the others. Annie and Lottie sit on the steps, hands idle in their laps. They speak low to each other. No one's paying us mind. We hug the wall and sidle. Dirty brick the color and odor of congealing blood. In this wing, the office wing, the windows are unbarred, and the one I want swings very slightly open. Come on, I say, but Julie has forgotten what we're doing. She shakes her head, says, naughty, pulls at the hem of her gown. bares her mottled shoulder. My heart sinks. It would be one of her days. She smiles, shy and slow. Just a leg up, I say, quick and fierce. Not naughty. Come on, you. It's this one here. I must have them. He will never give them to me. I don't know if she understands, but she nods and takes my foot in her hand. I pull myself up and wriggle, half in. The window frame indents my stomach. I smell paper and ink blots and metal. The walls are the familiar olive green, but there are comforts here. A blue and white china teacup stands in a saucer on the desk. The leather blotter is rich and dark. On it lies a soiled handkerchief. I imagine Goodman sitting in the chair, writing at the desk, using the handkerchief. Where are my letters? This seemed a simple idea, but the reality is different. The room is redolent of lemons. It will resist me. Something of him lingers here, not just a scent. Dread pulls at my heart. I struggle to pull myself farther over the sill, and just then, hands wrap about my ankle. Come on, says Doris's grim voice. I seize the worn curtains in fists, hold onto the frame, kick out hard. It's some comfort that I feel my heel crunch on bone. But there's shouting, feet pound the turf, and in a moment, there are many more hands. The curtains give from the rings with a rending sound. I writhe and scrabble for grip. I hear a sound like a dog growling, and it's coming for me. The weight is terrible. They all hang on me like lead. My fingers cling, then slip, and I fall toward the sorry earth. My head hits it hard, and sparks fly out. Warm hands, cool metal. Somewhere, heavy snoring. So, voices far above. Do take care, Doris. It's the biter. Proper rats in the attic, this one. I am seized, delighted by how exactly right she is. I know all about the rats. Pleasure, pure and piercing, occupies all my attention for some time. Weren't there above a fortnight, Doris is saying. They were quite amused by all the cleaning and washing the English nurses insisted on. Dirty blighters. Oh, I know. She's suddenly in my ear, and I startle, though I should know better by now. The flowering, exquisite slide of the needle. You've stuffed it up, Lottie. It's not my blame. Stop shifting about, you. Give over. Behave yourself. This to me, I think. I'm doing something to earn these rebukes. I can't tell what. Limbs and eyes and fingers are fantastic, indistinguishable. I will wait. I will bide my time. I will not die here. The needle once more. This time, it slides true. There, now. You won't be worrying us for a while. Something spreads through my veins like coral growing. What was I saying? The French. They're terrible, ungrateful. The voices fade into the far dark, go elsewhere. A new hand on my brow. Lemons. Oh, Iris. His voice brims with sorrow. I float. The pool is black. I breathe the water in. 1916, I'm 17. My lids part to gray light. Drifts, flurries. I am moving in spirals, in drifts of snow. A whoosh of rich, mossy smoke. A pipe. The click of teeth on the stem. The scent of lemons, his careful, diffident tenor, like water running over rock. The sound of a thumb quickly licked. I feel the pressure of his attention. Tiny sounds of coins, cloth, paper. He's standing over me, hands thrust into pockets, tinkering beneath the cloth. "Hello, Martin," I say. The detective is awake. He says. A hand on my eyelid, pulling it upward. Flash of white light, pink thumb. "We can do better for you," he says. He sounds very sad. I think we must try. Money rattles in his fingers. A hand on my head. I hold still. "Dr. Goodman," I say. "Please don't make me sleep. No more. Please." He takes my hand. "Only a little more, perhaps," he says. "Listen." I ask, "How long have I?" I try to sit. My limbs are wet string. It is Monday, September the 17th. "No," I say. "It's June." I taste the air. It has mold and swallows and bonfires in it. His hand light on my head. Papa waves at me from the lavender garden. I cough. My throat is coarsely chopped wood. "Tube feeding," he says kindly, "can be rough on one." Here, the water is cold shards of iron in my throat. I'm not in the ward. I'm in some green place I don't know, with metal studs binding metal walls together. A basin in the corner. Drips from somewhere. I need to go outside, I say. "Let me go to the garden." He sighs. "May I speak frankly? I have tried with you. I have instituted an intensive regime of helpful exercise, of improving pastimes, of electric therapy, of water therapy, of talking cure. In the course of these, you have injured 4 nurses, 2 with fairly serious bites. You have repeatedly attempted to enter my office and remove property. Letters, which as your behavior shows, you are not in a fit state to receive. You have attempted to leave the hospital on 3 separate occasions. This has resulted in you receiving," he ticks them off on his fingers, "a punctured trachea from a pencil, serious avulsions on your fingers and shoulders from a blunt knife, and various lacerations about the neck from objects such as drinking mugs, the unscrewed leg of a bed, and the toe of a hobnail boot, and these wounds heal slowly and badly because you are malnourished through tube feeding while sedated." "I'm sure you're right," I say. "I don't recall." Precisely, this is the familiar refrain. You do not recall. You do not remember your actions, and more specifically, you say you do not remember the act that brought you here. You insist that you are wrongly incarcerated. Your behavior toward me and my staff remains violent, troubling. As I am sure you must see, it is impossible to leave you in the general population at Allswood. I cannot allow this to continue, but I have removed all privileges, all possible sources of comforts. There is no means of reprimand now that is left untried. I have failed you. So what else is to be done? The green walls are sweating. They look unsafe, like a sand castle. They will fall in softly, bury us deep. I have a proposal for you, Iris. Now, you refuse to accept your crime, and in a sense, you are right not to do so. For you are at the mercy of your congenital condition, do you understand? It is not your fault. But nothing will change for you, do you see, if you do not have courage. You may stay here forever and bite Doris's fingers and be sedated for much of the time, your waking life narrowed to hours a week, the dosage of the pheno increasing as your resistance to the drug increases, which will exacerbate the accompanying memory loss. You will experience nothing and recall less. Eventually, one day when they wake you, your hair will be gray, and you won't know the old woman in the mirror. I very slowly put out my desiccated tongue. I stretch it out to its dry length through dry lips. I stare at him, eyes wide. I open the shutters. Just for a moment, I let him see in. You won't let me go, I say, just as you'll never give me my letters. I have long since schooled myself to believe them a fiction. He goes white and blank, licked pencil suspended in air. Then he nods as if I have a good point. His eyes are Persian cats. I will not coerce or persuade. I state facts merely. I have a high opinion of your intelligence. I will trust it now. He places a manila folder, the color of clotted cream, on the bed by my knee. Here are the studies. I will not insult you by suggesting you will not understand them. You will not be sedated for the next 2 days. You will be in isolation here. I'm afraid some of it will be unpleasant. Withdrawal, you know. At the end of that time, you will inform me whether you will return to sleep. He pauses and stands. The coins tinkle in his pockets. I could do it without your permission, he says. But I don't think that's the answer. I believe that you wish to be better. I wish for you to decide, which is the only way it will begin. So think. Through the dark, the cold sound of his exit. Metal, bolts, shining keys. Through the thick wall, someone snoring. The walls are bending, pulsing, concave. The ceiling is low, very low. My lungs don't seem to be working. The rats make little scuffles in the attic. Something breathes hot and gentle on the back of my neck. The scent of lemons is light in the air. Under it, the heavy stink of a big cat. I pick up the file. The words prefrontal lobotomy are written on it. Dogs are given large lesions of the occipital lobe by means of lobotomy. They become sweet and harmless even when they bit and fought before. When I surface, Goodman's in faded gray, collar sharp white against his vulnerable throat as he swallows. He raises a questioning hand, waits for my permission. I nod. He lifts the gauze. Gentle fingers brush my forehead. The light, inadvertent touch of his hand on the tip of my ear. Warm skin. Lemons. Did it go well? I try to ask. I'm not sure what comes out, but he seems to understand. Beautiful, he says. Perfect trephine openings, closed over nicely. Relief leaks through me, a slow, good drip. He says, "Oh, you clever thing." He may mean me or not. He replaces the bandage, settles it with infinite care around my shaved skull, sits back in the chair. May I show you some? Pictures? His face open, eyes soft. Tell me what you see. I look at a photograph of a cat. I say cat. I look at a photograph of a hat. I say hat. House. Bird. Gate. Flower. But sometimes those words don't come when I say them. Sometimes what comes out is handle or e or owls. He touches the back of my hand with a finger. It will come, Iris, he says. It will. We smile. Then there's a picture of something delightful made of curls and waves, which jumps off the card into the space between us. I feel hilarity growing. One moment, it's in me. The next, it's out, and I'm laughing. He smiles, holds his arm out, brings the picture closer, which sends me further into happiness. He asks, and this completes it. I am collapsed. I ask, what is it? What comes out is heartburn. I try again. Meat man. The words struggle through hoots and caws of laughter. Dr. Goodman turns the card, looks at it. His wide gray eyes widen farther, rise to meet mine. The smile spreads sweetly across his face. He's grinning properly like a boy with a fishing line. His laugh is unexpected, quick, low. We laugh together, almost weeping with it. The name comes on a wave of feeling. Raw blood. How did he come by a picture of my house? It brings me back to myself somewhat. Am I better now? I ask, and that works all right. I can go. Where? I've lost the word again. But I hold tight to a few certainties. That yesterday I read the file, that I said yes. That he promised that after I could. Iris, he says, a moment of confusion before I recall that's me. I am committed to it, Iris. We will entirely reduce your capacity and desire to harm others. You did the thing, the word which tastes of tin. So now I am better, I say, but there's that strange slippage of the tongue. What actually comes out of my mouth is burn it. I must go, he says with real regret. It's a pleasure to see you so well. He stands, peels his thumb absently across the stack of cards. They snap, they rattle, tick, tick, tick. I put my hand to my head. He moves to stop me, but the bandage falls to the floor with the SHHH. My hand explores the bare surface of my skull. So strange and soft, no hair. The stapling, the stitches cover me, tiny railways, and the ridges of older scars that are healed. There are 6 holes, not 2, I say. Isn't it? Arc with sage myth is what I hear. There should be 2 apertures only. Circus time, embolism, party making. I take my time. I fix him with my eye. I scent the air for traces of the season. Nothing but carbolic and lemons. I ask, how many times? How long, when are we? Suffused, umbrage, arbitrary. Sibilant. His eyes shine. Iris, you must have patience, he says. We are learning so much. You are a pioneer. Something hurts, not my head. I test everything gently. My midriff is swaddled in dressing. Something raw under there. Incision between my hip bones. I'm not an idiot, can imagine what they took. But I stare the question anyway. You will understand the necessity for that, he says. Your defect could only produce defective. Well, the slow swell, the curve of his lip is fascinating. I'm quick. The cards scatter with a whir. His fingers taste of lemon. There's a spurt of salt and tin. Should have taken my teeth while you were at it. Pillowy flesh and within it the bone. Whirling, whistling voices, a cacophony. The door flung open, and things and women's hands hold me down, and white starched shirt fronts press the breath from me, and, of course, the needle. The door swings shut. The bolts go home. Broad silence. His blood in my mouth. I spit onto the stiff pillow. Through a wall, someone snores. Far off thunder. I explore. My trembling fingers confirm it. Wasn't yesterday I saw that file. Not by far. How many times have I seen those cards? Will I see them again tomorrow for the first time? Have to snap that thought off as it comes or I'll lose it. How long? How long? How long? I was wrong. I'll die here. I should have known. My eyes won't make tears, but dart about the room without my say-so. The world is made of slippery angles, crazy, gleaming. Actually, I am losing it. Here I go. Iris, my father says in my ear. Burn it. I'm 19. Chapter 8. Tom Gilmore. January 2nd, 1918. Somewhere in France. Iris. Sorry for the silence. Not been myself. Got back from leave a week ago. Moved again yesterday. Can't say where. The rats always seem to find us all right. No secrets safe from rats. Red sky this morning. Crates came with the new boots, but only left feet, so we've cut the toes off. We were doing the barbed wire last night by full moon. 2 men shot. One by them and one by us in error. In the head. Not clean shots. I won't go on about all that. Sorry for the jumble. All my thoughts. A few weeks ago I thought I saw you. We were in a town. Everyone blind drunk and looking for women. I couldn't quite take it. Took a bottle to the fountain in the square. Moonlight. Sound of water. Everything very still and muffled up in sandbags. Scent of lilies. Didn't see her till she was at my shoulder. Came up quiet as smoke. I jumped a mile, but it was a worse shock when I looked at her. I said sorry for gawping you looked so like someone I knew. Would have sworn it was you, but she was different colors. Red hair. For a moment there was rot or decay in the air like something was dead nearby. But no, just lilies. Anyway, I said sorry again. But she just smiled, so I thought perhaps her English not very good. Then she said in a very English voice, "You must go to dig the grave." For some reason, it was the most frightening thing anyone's ever said. I said, "What do you mean?" But she was gone. And the smell of. I wasn't right for days after. Think perhaps everyone is mad now. And there's always something dead nearby. You and I, would we know one another? I am not what I was. Expect you're also changed. Anyhow, then came leave. Not a moment too soon, you might say. Home was awful. Farm knee-deep in dust. Weeds high in the yard. In the house floorboards rotted through. Windows broken. Dead pigeon in the chimney. Well, the stink. Wasn't so bad last time I was down. Or maybe I didn't notice. It looks a place where only sad things have happened. Is that true? But I did what I came to do. Your ring. Kept it with me all this while. Not in a pocket or with my things. On a string around my neck. Was afraid I'd lose it in the mud. Or it'd be stolen. There's as much of that about as you'd expect. Thought I might give it back to you one day. That won't happen. Left it for you. In the cave. On the stone. The water in the walls sounds like death. That's where it is if you want it. Do you remember? That the ones you love may never die. People used to believe that sort of thing. What a joke. Never thought I'd be glad to see the trenches, but I am. Even very flooded, which they are. Came back here to the mud, bad bread and weevils, and found things were solid again. The relief. And the company. Men are easier. These buggers know how it is. You don't start thinking. There's a song that goes round. We're here because we're here. We're here because we're here. We're here because we're here. Just goes on like that. Always thought it maddening, but not now. It's the only true thing left to say. We were always the greatest of friends, you and I. Friends might sound weak, I suppose. To those who don't know, it's not weak. Every memory and all the years. I send these letters to raw blood. Old man Shake's still there, I hear. Think of him old and alone in the empty rooms. Hope he stays in the stable. I was only in the house once. That day, it was enough. That house. You don't reply, so either you're gone, or you can't forgive, or these never reach you at all. Hope you understand. Why I must let it all go now. This is the last time I'll write. I can't keep doing it. I should have done something. I know. You told me to run. Shouldn't have run. Shouldn't have left you. Are you getting these? This is the last. Can't keep seeing you everywhere. Think I'm at the very end of what a person can be or stand. Anyhow, this is goodbye. Yours, T. Chapter 9. Meg Danforth. November 1881. Near Grimstock, Lancashire. Blood bonds can't be broken altogether. More's the pity. I feel it when Charles dies. In general, I try not to think of him. I have a letter on my birthday and a letter at Christmas. That is that. I have not seen him since I was a baby. When I was but little, I wrote him pleading notes. My older brother, he did not answer, and I told myself that I must have the direction wrong somehow, or that he was on a long voyage, and when he returned home, he would read my letters, come to Bantry Farm post-haste, kill Samuel Bantry, give me cake, take me to London, give me dresses, and so on. He did not. Later, Mrs. Bantry told me that cocktail feathers were for summoning, so I burned them each night. Come and save me. Cocks on all the nearby farms were bare that summer. But still, he did not come, and I learned not to hope for it. It was a slow learning. Later still, I tried to see him with the eye. Many, many times. But never did I, not once. His mind must close me out powerfully. He must bury me deep. My eye is very strong. If I cannot see him, it means he keeps no memory or love of me in his heart. I'm in the hayloft with the ladder pulled up. Samuel Bantry is below, wandering the farmyard, calling for me. He doesn't know I'm up here. He's just chancing it, idling away his time. It's easing into mid-morning, and he'll be into the village for Friday drinking soon. All I must do is hold tight. Meg, he says, come out. If you do not, you shall have the strap. You do not want the strap, do you? I keep my scorn silent. Does he think I will answer? Chancing it or no, he's got that slinking, black tone in his voice. Copper knob, he says. When I find you, you'll pay. The leather hits his palm with a thwack. As insults go, it is weak. I've had worse all my life. Red hair means witches around these parts, and there's nothing more to be said about it. Below, a bucket rings with Samuel's kick. A hen flaps across the yard in a rattle of clucks. His pace slows. He's thinking. His footfalls are quiet. I move behind a tower of hay. I dig in and down into the musty worm. The loft feels unsafe of a sudden, but I can see the rickety pine of the ladder against the wall. It is here, so how would he get to me? And what would he do if he did? Slaps. The strap. my ears would be soundly boxed. And that would be that. Bruises, a few welts, and tears are nothing new, to be sure. But I am not sure. There is another look that sits deep in his eye these days. I am lately 15. Women are punished differently from children. Scuffling below. Something is dragged across the muddy cobbles. It bodes ill for me. I make myself a mouse and burrow deeper into the hay. It is difficult because something is happening. The loft blinks about me like a great eye. Planks creak, and there is hay in my nose. Below, the sound of metal ringing on cobbles. But behind that, through that, I see a purple sky over a far moor, dawn over warm land, dew on the velvet grass, 2 men on a hill, crouched by a dead dog. I cannot hear, but their anger, their despair comes from them in waves. The hay is hot, the seed trickles into my ear. Something clangs as it comes to rest on the edge of the trapdoor. I must move, but I am slipping in the sky over a house with many gables and chimneys, and Samuel's eyes and ears rear up into the loft like a sea monster surfacing. An old sheep hurdle makes a handy ladder after all. Mrs. Bantry's eyes are round and owlish. She fills my vision like a landscape. Behind her, a corner of blue sky. I start to say, she puts a finger to her lips. I hush. The earthy stench and gluey mud cover me. In my mouth, under my nails, in my ears. My hair is rat tails of brown. An acceptable color at last. Under the mud, there is blood in various places. I'm on the midden where I fell, I suppose, when pushed. Above in the loft, Samuel is whistling. He is off to Friday drinking, having shown me what's what. We scrub me in the horse trough by the lane. I climb in, sit down. The water rears a high and glassy cliff, then crashes. Mrs. Bantry pours the cold cupfuls over. I wince under her hands, but we do not discuss it. What would be the use? The bruises are dark feathers on my wrists, my neck, my back, my legs. I am splintered. The outside of me is weeping and holds Mrs. B, for her comfort and for mine. Another part of me is thinking, how long, then, until. Because Samuel has never strapped me on my thighs before. A little of me, the clearest, deepest part of me, is thinking of my brother. Mrs. Bantry counsels me, as always, not to cross him, not to cross Samuel. We both know, from long experience, that it will serve no purpose. However closely I obey, he will find cause. Today was not too bad. I have been bedbound for weeks in the past. Each one of my ribs or fingers has been cracked or broken over the years. My collarbone was broken twice. The truth is that were I not first in line, the black eyes, the loose teeth, the ringing ears would be for Mrs. Bantry. Still, she wants me to be spared, as if it would not mean her pain. She is behaving as if there were justice and some kind of reason in the world, which is admirable. She is a good woman. Mrs. Bantry taught me the first steps. She taught me that the witch's ladder is made with yarn of certain colors. She taught me the feathers and the flowers, their sakes when whole, when burnt. She never really believed. I saw that the first time that they sang in my hands the feathers, the blood. The first time I had the eye. They were little games for Mrs. Bantry. Women's games, passed down through her family, thrilling and secret. Ritual, habit, without consequence. It must have been a great shock when they leaped for me, with bright fire and with power. She was afraid then. She never taught me more, but it was too late. By that time, the roots and the earth and the blood spoke to me themselves and told me their uses. Mrs. Bantry has always cared for me in her way, though she did not understand me. But in some things, she cannot defy her husband. I know something that they do not yet. My brother will die, is perhaps dead already. Who will send the letter? I have a day, 3 at most, before they know that there is no more money. I breathe and banish fear. I scold myself. All is not lost. There is always something to be done. I will discover my course. It's a clear dawn, pale moon still suspended. The heather is springy and good under my feet. I run, my bruises singing. There is not much time for this. The vale beneath Bow Peak is soft in shadow. The brook is a crooked silver seam on the valley floor. I follow it up along the thin slice of bank against the current, morning dew creeping through the soles of my boots. At the head of the valley, the spring leaps like an eel from mossy stone. I take from beneath my shawl the stoppered phial of vinegar and oil and the tin plate. Copper is good. Silver is better. But this is what I have. I put the tin plate under the spring. Water rushes over. Good, hard sound. The light is coming. The valley glows. The moon thin, bitten silver. When the moment is right, I take the dish of spring water and put it on the grass. I pour in the oil and vinegar and wait. The water goes still as glass. The moon and the dawn are in it. I breathe deep. I say what I need to say. Then I ask, show me the answer. Nothing. A tiny midge lands in the dish. The surface of the water shivers in concentric circles. I wait. Nothing happens. Perhaps it is the wrong question. Who will help me? I ask. I wait. Nothing. When the Bantrys find that I can no longer be kept, they will turn me out. I understand it. There is so little to go around. Samuel will do what he will before they put me out, though. I would stake my life on it. Money has been the thin, invisible line that kept me from disaster, and now it is removed. I will be a hedge beggar, and sooner or later, I will die of cold, of hunger, raped and beaten to death in a ditch. That is what becomes of hedge beggars. What is to be done? It is borne upon me that my situation is hopeless. I look at the blank moon in the pale water. I laugh a little. It reflects the truth. There is no one who will help. He never gave me cause to love him, Charles. But I think of him dying and my eyes burn. Tears strike the still water. It whirls and shivers. Tears for him and for myself. The moon scatters and rearranges itself. It's all about me in silver shards. A terrible white face with madness in the eyes. Horror binds my heart. The water shivers, a sound like cards shuffling, and it's gone. I am somewhere else entirely. Around me, warm stone walls. A house. Passages and rooms open out as I go. In the center is a hall, like the chamber of a heart. Faint without, the sound of rain. The scents are everywhere, rain and stone. A room now, a library perhaps, a study. leather and panels of burnished wood. Through the leaded panes, wild gray hills. Below me, a chair, kicked hastily aside. I swing in space. The pain is immediate and savage. I cannot pay much mind to anything but the great crushing sorrow wrapped tight about my heart, and the rope, coarse and bristling, even tighter about my throat. These are not my hands. It is not my throat. I look through the hanging man's eyes. This man. His flesh holds things in common with my flesh. It remembers. We have seen the same mysterious things in the warm nothing dark that comes before birth. As I feel the shape of our noses, which are the same, and the pond green of our eyes, which is the same, I understand with a lurch of sorrow. Here is my brother at last. We sway, creaking, from the beam. We choke in agony. Our legs kick uselessly in space. Our air-starved body gives up, bit by bit. I am to know him only for a heartbeat as he dies. A face is in my brother's mind. This is his dying thought. A man. Dark, vast, and still as if carbon. Black hair streaked with white. Long, elegant hands. The light in his eyes that is like the sun on brown river water. Deep. The love Charles feels moves into me like a blow. I am stunned. I am weeping with it. Who is he? I will never know. A most torturous gift, no sooner given than torn away. But there is this. As my brother's brain becomes a bonfire, as it fires thousands, millions of stars into the endless night, as his flesh changes from living pink to dead, I hear it. My name, as his throat is crushed and blood bursts in his eyes, he feels me. Meg? He asks. Whatever, how? Oh God, I am afraid. Hush, I say. I'll be your guide. He is glad. He lets me touch his heart with mine. At the last. When it's done, I am very weak. I sit and clutch the turf with my fists. I weep. I claw the ground. He has left me again, and this time for good.